Morning calm. Welcome to my I am the creative Contessa, and welcome to this morning's creative medieval party. Today we are going to be doing finger loop braiding. We were going to do two-person finger loop braids, but unfortunately, my condottiero threw his back out doing deadlifts, and so he's not able to really sit for long, protracted periods of time or really stand. It's complicated. Anyway, I will be doing some one-person finger loop braiding to demonstrate for you. But first, as always, we shall start with the traditional getting dressed while we wait for everyone to actually join. So let me go ahead and make sure I'm seeing all of your comments. As always, in this format, if you have any questions or comments that are appropriate, pop them in the live chat. If you make inappropriate comments, we'll delete them and we'll block you forever. So just keep that in mind. And remember, I have a pretty big latitude about what counts as appropriate or inappropriate, so you have to be real raunchy to get banned on my channel. Good morning, Laurie. It is lovely to see you this morning. It is a gorgeous morning here. I was so sad that I wasn't tracking the weather. I would have made provisions to set this up outside in one of the beautiful historic spaces that are kind of vaguely in my neighborhood because the skies are azure blue, so crystal clear this morning. And weather is just perfect. It would have been so lovely to be outside, but here we are. We're inside for now. Yeah, good morning, everyone from Pennsylvania. Thomas, so lovely to see you. It is truly May here in Korea, and I really feel like the weather we've been having would have made our medieval ancestors so very happy to be outside and celebrating, bringing in the May, as they said in the 15th century. It definitely feels like the lusty month of May here. Yeah. So what kind of projects is everyone working on? I was going to be demonstrating a two-person finger loop braid for you, a different one, but some of you may or may not have heard my condottiere was thrown his back out. So I'm going to be demonstrating a different one for you today. It might be that cool one that makes the pipette style trim, the condrake, or it might be a different one. We'll see. But I also have other projects to work on with you and to demonstrate for you. And I've got lots of fun things to talk about today. We'll be discussing May Day traditions. I discussed them last week with Philip on Irish medieval history on his channel in the live stream we did there. But I'm going to go ahead and bring them to this channel as well because it is May and I'm really feeling the season. Yep. So I'm using for my lacing, I'm using this fantastic replica lacing bodkin that was made by Kate Ramsey on Etsy. She's not a channel sponsor. I'm just putting the word out there for my fellow crafters who sell handmade items at reasonable prices. And she modeled this one directly off of one of Ghirlandaio's portraits, one of his sort of 1480s, 1490s portraits of a modest Florentine lady. And it works so well. So I'm really loving it. And
have you ever done a lace dawns?
The lace dawns, let me see it. Yeah, I've done it. It's been a long time since I've done a lace dawns, but I have done a lace dawns.
Kind of a pretty one.
Yeah, I've done pretty much almost all of the braids in that book that are for one person. And I did promise this week that we would be doing that I would be demonstrating for you, working from the original source and whatnot. But I didn't get around to actually preparing that in a way that it'll be useful. So I think next week we'll do a finger loop braid reconstruction demonstration from the facsimile of the original manuscript. So you can see us working through the 15th century English in 15th century handwriting. How exciting will that be? So you can see the process of reconstructing a handcraft from the Middle Ages, the considerations you need to make when reading in the original language. And you can even maybe help me make some decisions on how to interpret certain instructions. So I think we're going to do that in next week's live stream. I promise I'll actually get around to preparing this week. This week has flown by. It's been a little crazy because my condottiero threw his back out. And so I've had to do some nursing this week of a very old school type. And yeah. It's been raining for days here in Baton Rouge. Ooh, which means if it's in Baton Rouge, I would assume that means it's probably that pretty heavy kind of rain that splashes back up at you and threatens to flood, turns everything to a soggy mess. What, the lace bastion?
It's a really unusual one.
Huh.
It'd be annoying to get the loops ready for you, but
yeah, you'd have to get their loops ready for me. I think we'll just do maybe we'll just do the condrake. That's something very, very different. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've got the coif on, or the kerchief, the couvre-chef, depending on what time period and which clerk is actually jotting down the language terms. So some of you have heard my lecture on medieval clothing terms, or jotting down the clothing terms. Some of you have heard my lecture on medieval clothing terms. And the idea is that, yeah, when I do this myself, I have to do it backwards and turn it. The idea is that we don't necessarily know for certain if a medieval person uses the word tunica, what exact garment they might mean by that. We assume we know, we think we know, there are ways we might be able to tell, but we don't necessarily know for certain because there is no dictionary in the 15th century was written between 15th century English and future modern English. So, we think this might be called a couvre-chef in French or a kerchief in English. It might also have been called a bonnet. And the word coif doesn't really appear in very many 15th century sources anymore, which is interesting. So
There's two colors, too.
let's let them decide. Okay, so the braid we're going to be doing today can be done in a solid color, but to demonstrate the different pieces, we're going to do it in two colors, which is an option as well. So which of these two colors would you like? Black, red, yellow, green. Go ahead and let me know in the chat which two colors you'd like to see. So this is going to make a kind of piping style trim where the one color will actually wind up, spiral up the outside. I can demonstrate. It's right there on the writing desk. Writing desk.
Oh, I see.
Joseon era writing desk.
This one, right?
Yeah, that one. Okay, so we're going to be doing this one today.
So we did it in yellow and green.
So we did it. So you can see how obnoxious it is in that yellow and green. So yeah, pick any two of those four colors, and we will do it in that. Schwarzrot gold. Yeah. Well, two colors, not three. Three. I mean, you could do it in three, but it would be kind of it would be odd. Yeah. What types of yarns are you using? Both red and yellow. Okay, so for the demonstration purposes, because if you do this on camera, what we learned early on back during the pandemic when I was teaching online Fingerloop workshops is if you do this on camera, it has to be thick or it doesn't even show up. So I normally work in silk, silk floss or silk embroidery thread, sometimes silk buttonhole twist. But for this, we're just using good modern yarn, and this is whatever cheap thing we got from the local traditional Korean market. Yeah, Someone market here in Daegu. So this
extensive yarn.
Yeah, it said it was cotton on the thing, but of course, it isn't. It's rayon or something like that.
No, it's like a mix.
Or it's a mix,
It is
right?
like 60% cotton.
Oh, right. There is cotton. So it actually said on it, this is the label. It actually said soft, pure cotton. And my poor condottiero thought that meant that the whole thing would be cotton, which it's not. It's 75% cotton, 15% rayon, 10% acrylic.
What I didn't understand was the soft meant
Yeah.
the other stuff.
Yeah. So the soft, yeah, to make it soft like that, you have to add those artificial fibers, or cotton just won't be this soft. Anyway, just for demonstration purposes, this will get put aside for, showing people, demonstrating the art, showing people what we can do in classes and things like that. But I won't use it on my medieval stuff. So this is all for you, dear viewer. Okay. I do love the yellow and green. Yellow and green, it's pretty assertive. It knows what it wants.
It knows.
It knows. Well, we already have one in yellow and green, red and yellow. So what red and yellow are my colors, actually.
True.
Yellow and green are my condottiero's colors. So today we will go with yellow and red. So my condottiero is going to go ahead and get that set up, and he's going to pass me the book. So I will show you. Yeah. So for those who don't want to do their own reconstruction, this book, Take 5 Bows Departed, is available. Try not to get it from Amazon. Get it from
their website.
Oh yeah, you can go to Elizabeth Burns and Gina Barrett's Take 5 Bows Departed website and buy the book directly from them.
And it's always best price there.
It's the best price there. Also, it can be very expensive on Amazon, besides which we boycott Amazon on this channel. Anyway, Take 5 Bows Departed. These two ladies looked at the original instructions and did reconstructions and lay it out like this. With diagrams, these dots are the loops and represent your fingers and the motion that they're supposed to take. And they provide they don't provide the original instructions, unfortunately, which I think would have been better if they provided the original English so you could see, but they don't. But they do provide a breakdown. They tell you how to set it up. They show you what it should look like at the end. And then they go by step. And it has introductory sections on setting it up, on some of the history. So I do recommend this book, even if you want to get into reconstructing yourself. This is a valuable first resource to get. Absolutely. Because they also, the ladies also talk about the two manuscripts that we have from the 15th century that actually describe this, where they're located, what the problems are. You can talk about bookbinding and how the books are put together. So Take 5 Bows Departed. Okay. So today we are going to be doing the Kondrak Lace Departed. And remember that all of these sorts of decorative bits, is she being troublesome?
Yes.
All of these, the cat is getting into the loops. My condottiero is preparing the loops off camera. So remember that all of these sorts of decorative bits, sorry, I couldn't hold her while doing this. All of these sorts of things, these are called laces in 15th century English. They're not called strings. They're not called, although, no, these are all called laces. Yeah. And so the term lace actually first referred to these sorts of wares, these sorts of narrow wares that are decorative, could be decorative, or could be decorative, or could be practical, or both at the same time. Like this one is definitely practical, and lace indented makes a really pretty trim that looks really nice around the neckline. And so that's where the term lace originally meant. And my theory is that it only came to refer to what is actually bobbin lace after the advent of bobbin lace, because the initial first sorts of early bobbin laces looked like the kind of things you could make by fingerloop braiding, by making laces, as they were called. And the loops, these what we call loops in the fingerloop braiding, in the 15th century, those were called bows, boas, a bow, singular, boas, plural. So first, now I've lost the page for the contract. So let me get back to the contract. Yeah, so are there any questions about any of that? Let me see. I do love the yellow and green, unfortunately. Okay, just checking the chat. So normally for this braid, here's a demonstration of what's called a swivel. And this actually rotates. This allows the laces to rotate, the bows to rotate, because this is a twisting one. It intentionally has a twist. If you don't have a swivel, that's no problem. I don't actually. I need to actually talk to a smith. She did what?
She got one of those
Oh God, the cat just ran away with one of the bows. My condottiero is now retreating to the safety of a room to do the bows. Anyway, if you can't find one of these, it's no problem. You just set up your anchor to be super duper long. So that is going to be the process for making this bow. You don't need to have a swivel. It's definitely nice to have. It will be easier to work with, and you can see the picture of the silk woman, as they would have been called in the 15th century, with the bow. No, baby, no. No, you were being problematic. The cat's now complaining that the condottiero has locked her out of the room and she can't get to the laces. Okay, so in the meanwhile, let me talk about our latest set of projects. I have this. So we're waiting for more people to show up. My condottiero, we actually picked apart my condottiero's arming farsetto. The sleeves haven't been reattached. And we have now put it back together. And so just imagine there will be sleeves with a puff here and a fitted part in the lower arm. It's now been put back together, and we actually whip stitched it back together. So we basically sealed off all the pieces individually and then whip stitched them together. And that makes a really nice flat seam, which is especially nice when you're dealing with a padded garment. And in Italian, this is called a farsetto, because farsa in 15th century Italian means the padding. That is the padding that's on the inside of this, what we would call batting maybe, or filling or stuffing, right? And that's a dialect word in Florence specifically. So each part of Italy, 15th century Italy, had a different word for what in English we call a pourpoint in 15th century English, or a doublet. So depending on where you are, and it was all based on the word for filling or stuffing or padding, right? So in Bologna and Venice, it's Giuppone, which is there, or Giubia, references to that in Rome also. Zuppa is also another word for this kind of fitted padded garment based on the word for padding. So, it's very interesting, those regional dialects, how they impact, which can make studying fashion in 15th century Italy complex because you might find a source that might use both words, depending on who was doing the chronicling. And yet they mean the same exact garment, right? Have the lacing rings been sewn into the shoulders? Oh, so these are, right. So in the shoulders, you see these are lacing holes, right? And that is not for sleeves. That is not for the attachment of sleeves because this is an arming garment, right? And that's why there are holes here in the skirt. These are holes not just for the hosen, but also, and actually this one doesn't have the holes it needs for the leg harness. So this was basically your attachment point for your harness as a 15th century man at arms. And so these holes here are meant for pieces of shoulder harness, shoulder armor to lace in. The sleeves also have, grab them. They're still apart, so you can see them in their separate state. The sleeves also have holes for the couture, as it would be called in 15th century English, which is a bastardization of the 15th century French. So that would be for attaching, right, the elbow piece of elbow armor would go here. And so also on this sleeve, although the holes have really worn away, there would be holes in the upper part of the sleeve for the rest of the arm harness and also for different layers of mail to point onto the garment. So yeah, the 15th century farsetto was not just a snazzy civilian garment, it was an arming garment. And I just did a short on this, literally just released this morning, if you want to go check that out later on for some more details. Yeah, so this particular set, my condottiero does not have, shall we say, the most appropriate harness for his era yet. We're working on that. So the way that the holes are set up here are not necessarily in the spots they would have been on an actual 15th century farsetto. That being said, we have two extant farsetti and they all have different kind of hole arrangements. And then if you look at that short I just made, if you look at the portraiture, then you can also see there that, there are different arrangements of holes on the arm part, which I can't show you because it's not attached, but on the upper part of the sleeve, right? There's different numbers of holes, different arrangements of holes. And you always want, when you're pointing something heavy, and even just for hosen, these are actually the holes for hosen, you always put two holes together because you want to distribute the pressure of the point through more of the fabric. So you don't want to have just one hole and one point. So you actually poke your laces through and then it's pulling on a broader part of the skirt, right? Not just one tiny small part. Yeah. Okay, so that's where we are at this. And this, we pulled this apart so that we could use it as a basis for a new farsetto. And so we actually laid it out and placed it on cardboard, poster board, on poster board. And now we have solid pieces that reflect this, which my condottiero has been wearing for 12 years. And so it is literally molded to his body. But I have also been working on his new Diego di Cavaniglia style farsetto, which is different than this one. This one is more 1450s in style, much deeper arm's eye, longer in the torso, also much wider skirts on the bottom here. So also much fuller. I mean, look at this is the upper sleeve, just the upper sleeve, me for scale. Right. So much fuller upper sleeves. The Diego di Cavaniglia's is of a style where the sleeves they're still full, but they're not they're not masculinely full as they are in the 1450s, shall we say. So I have been making progress on that. And unfortunately, that is over there in a pile of things, and my condottiero isn't here to fetch it out. So that's where we are on this project. And I have actually finished the new kerchief. For those of you who've been waiting for it, the new silk organza kerchief. And some of you may be wondering what happened to the other batch of silk organza that I'd been starching that molded oh so attractively. I was able to, it got hung up to dry somewhere. Hold on a minute. Let me see if it's over here. Nope, that is the other kerchief. Oh, it's not dry. Okay, it got folded. Right. So I soaked it for 3 days in a solution of vinegar and OxyClean. And the mold came out, but unfortunately, and there's no holes that I can see, thankfully. But unfortunately, you see these orange stains? Yeah, those are mold stains, and they refuse to come out. And they're not, yeah, there's probably 5 or 6 of these mold stains. They're not everywhere per se, and they're not hideously obvious. So as a kerchief, as a veil, it will be fine. I was able to mostly rescue it. Anyone who puts their puts their eyes that close to a kerchief that's dangling from one of my headdresses, better be a lady in waiting, or there might be dire consequences for their life choices. So it doesn't have holes in it. The silk organza resisted the actual eating. It wasn't molding for that long, I guess. So the story has a medium happy ending. Not perfect, but still usable and won't be visually obvious from the range at which anyone should be gazing upon my kerchiefs. Yeah. Right. So that's the update on that. Here is the new farsetto. So these are the pattern pieces for the new farsetto, the one that's in the style of Diego di Cavagna. And I know that many of you have been interested, asking me to do more on men's clothing. So I have been, I promise. And a vlog will be coming out on part 2 or 3 of this fitting process. Anyway, I've been unfortunately, we've had to make a lot of adjustments between what I sketched out on the fabric and what ended up actually fitting. And so in some cases, I think I'm not going to be able to use these pieces quite the way I'd wanted. The idea was I would do the pattern in the fabric that would become the lining, but I've had to add so many little pieces in here and there to get it to fit properly. For instance, here is the side of the garment, right? And I ended up having to add pieces to make the arm's eye less deep. I cut the arm's eye too deep. And then I had to add pieces into the shoulder area to actually put the seam where it needs to go and make it big enough to actually fit and sit high enough. And then I had to add pieces onto the collar in the back to make the collar come up high enough. Anyway, at this point, I've had to add in so many pieces that I think I'm going to have to cut out new lining once I perfect all of these little additions and I decide that it fits in back the way I want it to. So by that point, I'm just going to have to cut an entirely new pieces. But I think I might be able to use these pieces from the patterning for the padding, the farsa, because what we do know is that in by Diego di Cavagna's time, the farsa was being caught between 2 layers of linen or hemp, or even there's possible reference to nettle cloth, right? So I might be able to use these at least as one of the 2 layers for that, so it doesn't go entirely to waste. But I will have to cut an entirely new lining out once I finish this process. We're almost there. You can see the random pinning I did on this shoulder to get the seam to be where it's supposed to be, because on Diego di Cavagna's farsetto, the shoulder seam is actually not center. The shoulder seam is actually slightly behind center, which is actually is a later style of sleeve seam based on the evidence we had until that point, until Diego's farsetto comes along. But it really seems that that even as of the end of the 15th century, you've got that back set sleeve seam. Yeah. Handsome, are you done? Oh my God, I don't know why it's taking so long for him to set those loops up. It doesn't take me that long. Okay. So I apologize. We had some there was a delay getting ready this morning because of back injury issues slowing everything down. So are there any questions about the patterning process of Diego di Cavagna's farsetto? Is it a French outfit? What I'm wearing, yes, what I'm wearing now is very French, is very 15th century French. This one that I'm making, this farsetto, this is the Florentine version. Well, Diego di Cavagna was actually from the southern part of Italy, from Otranto. So this is actually more Southern Italian, but it definitely looks a lot like the style of farsetto that they were wearing in the northern part of Italy as well. So this is the Italian version. This is the Italian version. It would have sleeves, mind you. What I'm wearing is very mid 15th century French, for certain. this couvre chef, this style of kirtle, very, very mid 15th century French. Have you decided on the falsetto padding? Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that. The padding on Diego, what's left of the padding of Diego's, not much is left. And that kind of also tells me what it was. So in Diego's original falsetto, the padding is actually cotton, the little bit that has survived. In the extant one from the 1430s, in Pandolfo Malatesta's falsetto, that falsetto actually has a fascinating blend of padding. It's got silk, it's got wool, it's got cotton, it's got linen, it's or flax, it has hemp. Like it's this crazy blend. I'm thinking for simplicity's sake, at least for the first one, the one I'm making out of wool, I'm going to do that out of cotton. But I was looking at the process. I was thinking about making my own cotton batting, trying to figure out the medieval process for doing it. But that might come after I make the first one. So at least my condottiero has some more clothes, and then I'll experiment with making my own 15th century style cotton padding, because I think there's probably a needling process involved. So what I need to figure out is if there's like an actual tool for that, or if I'm literally just sitting there with needles, or what kind of implement they use. So if you know anything about making 15th century padding, you know how to take fibers and turn them into a sheet of padding as would have been done in the 15th century, do let me know. I've got to look into it. I was actually just thinking about this last night. But for this first one we're going to do is probably going to be cotton. But cotton was absolutely the gold standard of padding fibers by the 15th century, and had been basically since the 13th century, if not the 12th. Everyone thinks there wasn't cotton in Europe. Yes, there was. They just weren't necessarily weaving it into fabric. They were using the batting. There was a massive cotton industry in medieval Europe, and cotton was the padding of choice for most padded garments based on the inventories and expense accounts. Here, come here. Hey, you. Come here, kitty. Okay.
I think you forgot that this is a bicolor loop.
Let me see. Probably pad sticking and quilting combined. Well, pad stitching. Well, no. I'm talking about before you even get to the pad stitching. So I'm pretty certain that there was a process by which you get the fibers to fuse together without thread.
Like felt.
It's like felting, but not felting. Yeah. So something like felting, but not felting. Yeah. Some kind of needling process. I know with wool, you actually do needling. They used to do needling to actually get the fibers to come together to into a something that could be used for batting. So I have to look into that more, but it will be cotton, 100% cotton. And let me give you a tip, everyone. If you are padding your garments, and you really
Motherfucker.
sorry about that foul language, get the cat. Nope.
She pulled them all out.
She did.
Like I had it all nice.
You should have locked her in the bathroom.
I should have.
That's what you should have done. Anyway, no little baby. Anyway, what was I talking about before that bow disaster? The cat just attacked all the bows and ran away with them.
Now they're all
Yeah. What was I talking about before that? Padding. Yes, but in what context?
making sure you're using the all natural.
Yes,
cotton.
make sure not only are you using all natural cotton, but modern cotton batting is often chemically treated to fuse it together, and that's not included in the composition of the fiber. So it will say 100% cotton, but these chemicals have been used to fuse it, and also sometimes to make pesticides to prevent things from eating it. And that actually makes it heat retentive. So you might think you're using cotton batting that's going to allow you to breathe, but it's not. So you need to make sure, you need to do your research and figure out which brand is actually not heat treated, not chemically treated, not heat fused, so that it will actually breathe properly. Yeah. And I don't have an answer for what is currently the thing. It's been a long time since I had to buy cotton batting because I have a large supply of it. And honestly, I don't remember what brand it was. It was like 12 years ago that I bought it. 13 years ago. Yeah, who knows if they're even still in business. Yeah, this is Hello Kitty or Puppy. Yeah, this is a kitty. She really desperately wants to get to those loops.
Desperate.
Yeah. Okay, so what the loop we're going to wait, we're doing the chondrite. It's not split? Is it split?
Yeah, that's what's taking so long. 7
Oh, you're
bicolor
right.
loops.
Okay. Okay. So today's lace that we're going to be doing, the condrake, involves what are called bows departed. So the reason that this thing is called Take 5 Bows Departed is because that's actually one of the original pieces of instruction. And a bow departed means that it's a bicolor bow. So the first thing we need to do is set up our bicolor bows, and I guess I should have actually demonstrated that myself. Okay.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember how we do the end.
Okay.
Nice.
Swapping out. Okay, so here we have our bows departed, right? And basically you do that by, cutting. What I do is I cut loops in each color, 4 loops in each color in this case, because you need 4 loops. 7 loops. Right. So you cut 4 in one color, 3 in another, and then you cut them in half, and then you just bind them like this.
7 total loops.
Yeah.
So I do 7 of each color.
You did 7 of each. Okay, whatever. Anyway, split them up, 7 of each color, split them up, and then bind them like this, right? Okay. Now I actually need a longer anchor than that.
Longer?
Yeah. So this is what's called the anchor, these yarns here, and we're going to definitely you need a much longer anchor because you need lots of room for twist. Lots of room for twist.
Because you're not using a.
Because we're not using a swivel. That might be long enough. We'll see.
Make sure you put it in just like that because I got them lined up so that the colors are in the right direction.
Okay. So we're going to need, this is going to have to be higher.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so put the anchor through.
Oh, you like it better when it's on the roll, huh?
Okay, so we anchor it. Okay, so we've got our anchor bound to it, and the anchor at the end of this process will come off. You can cut it out entirely. It does not have to stay. It will not interfere with your loops. Okay, I need the Sharpie so we can mark my fingers.
I have it right here.
Okay, so now we're going to give me my present tense. So remember with finger loop braiding, each finger actually in the instructions is given a letter, right? So A are your index fingers, and we're going to mark it like this so you can see on both the top and the fronts. Yep. Okay, then your middle finger is B. She's really running away with that string. So for you, those of you who have cats, do you ever get what we call sausage poos, where the cat has consumed hair or string, and then it, basically makes everything come out in, yeah, well, our cats live in a textile rich environment, so we often have this as an issue.
See them
Yeah.
running.
Your ring finger is C. Yeah, we see them running. And your pinky is D. And in this braid, you actually use all of these. In this lace, you use all of these. Right? Okay. So A, B, C, and D. Okay. So now we get to anchor our braid to a point, and this can be your toe. Actually, it's not going to be my toe because my toe has stockings on it right now. It can be a toe. It can be a piece of furniture. That will have to come closer.
No,
Yeah.
it's movable.
Yeah. It can be a toe, it can be a piece of furniture, it can be a doorknob if the door will stay shut if you pull on it. It can be, anything that is solid and stable. A tree, if you're out in nature, I've often tied off to a tree. So no problem there. They did cough up fur balls. Yeah, our cats don't only just cough up fur balls, they excrete things in string form.
And as you can see, she's back for more. Okay.
Okay, so this is actually a pretty. Okay, you're gonna have to put her. You're gonna have to put her away. Lock her in the bedroom.
You have to put her away.
No, you can't. You can't do that. I can't. It needs to be closer, much closer. I need room for it to twist. So bring it much closer. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, adjust this. Would you adjust this up? No, go put her away. Go put her away. I don't understand this resistance.
There's no resistance except from her.
You're gonna have to put him away too, I think. So the cats were sleeping before this. I would like everyone to know. Right. Okay. So we're going to first step is to divide our loops up. Now, when you first get your loops distributed, there might be some. Yeah, you're gonna have to put him away too. The cats were asleep. I swear to God, they were asleep before we got the string out. And cats have a sixth sense for string. We're just gonna have to remember if we do finger loop braiding, they're gonna have to go away early on in this process. Yeah. So when you are when you are distributing your strings, there might be some twisting that you have to undo. If there's a little bit of, twisting and knotting at the base, it doesn't really matter. Remember, the ends of your braids are going to be the parts that are going to be the parts. Yeah, there's the other cat. Are going to be the parts that are going to be on the end, and they're going to get tucked into something or tucked under something, right? So you don't have to worry about that so much. For those just joining, welcome. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying this crazy cat show / medieval crafting party. Now, when you're setting up these departed bows, as they're called, these bows departed for the condrape, you actually set them up so that they are a mirror of each other, right? Which means that
It's okay, buddy.
you still not managed to catch it.
I did, but then when I went to put the other cat in, this cat escaped.
You should have.
The door was shut.
Was it? Okay. Okay, so our initial setup, could you take the couch and pull it away, actually?
Yeah.
So the initial setup is three on one hand, 4 on the other, right? Like this. Sorry, I'm just going to reposition this one so that's a little bit better. Oh, we need the white cloth over my lap.
Got it.
Okay. And remember that in any finger loop braiding, one of the tricks is to keep your fingers hooked like claws. Sorry. Keep your fingers hooked like claws, right? We're putting the white cloth of coverage over my lap so that it becomes more visible. Over here too, so that it's covering everything. Over the cloth. Yeah.
All right.
Creating a nice white field. Okay. Okay. And this one has to, Hanson, this one needs to get moved. Move it left. Yeah, good. And then closer. Yeah, and then lower. Okay. Lower. Okay, that's good. And then a little bit angled this way. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so here we go. This is your initial setup, right? In this case, we're starting with yellow on top and red on bottom. That's just a choice. It's not going to matter. And I forget.
Doesn't it determine which one's the spiral?
So yeah, I was about to say, yeah. So it does matter. I don't know why I said that. What matters is the one that's on top is going to be the one, I forget. The one that's on top is the one that is the.
I've never done the contract, so I don't actually know. We'll find out.
No, it says it somewhere here. Right. The right. I've forgotten which one. One of the two colors becomes the one that goes on the outside, basically, and we'll figure that out in a moment. This was not supposed to be the braid we were doing today. We had to completely rework our plan because my Kondo Todiero woke up basically unable to move because of his back injury. So he was fine yesterday, and this morning it got really unfine. So sorry about that. Sorry, this was not the plan. We've had to rework. And I just did this one and I don't remember because I don't care. Normally I do this in one color. I'll be honest. I normally do this braid in one color because I prefer the look of the one color for doing trims and whatnot. But for the visual effect for your purposes, this is definitely more interesting to do it in the two colors. So one of these colors will end up being the spiral that goes up the outside and the other color will be the base. So this is actually a pretty easy braid. And everything is taken unreversed. And if you remember, reversed or unreversed is a difference between whether you grab the top part of the bow or the bottom part of the bow. If you grab the bottom, that reverses it. You can see that actually causes a twist to happen. right? So unreversed means you grab the top part and no twisting happens, it just comes straight across. See what I mean? So in this case, the braid, it's all unreversed and it only has 4 steps, which makes this really easy and should go pretty quickly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put our fingers correctly because I just messed around a little bit. So we have 4 on one hand on A, B, C, and D. Thumbs are basically extra tools in the bow making process, in the lace making process, right? Your thumbs are just extra. Just a little bit more back. Thumbs are extra. And so there's different ways you can go through loops, you can go around loops, and this one we're actually going to be going around the back of all the loops. So this it's a little bit challenging in that regard. So basically A is going to go through B like this. Okay, and this is where I usually use my thumb to kind of prop open the bow so that it makes everything easier. You don't have to, but I really find that using the thumb to help prop open that bow helps a lot. Okay, and now we're actually going to go all the way around the outside. So the outside of the left hand, right? And I'm going to actually grab bow A unreversed, right? We don't want it to twist, and then pull it back through. Okay. And so now I have 3 on one hand and 4 on the other. And you'll notice, and you can actually, when you do 2 colors, you can actually keep an eye on whether you're accidentally twisting things or not, because at no point should any of these colors invert. Yellow, in my case, yellow should always be up, red should always be down. Okay. Just let me check the comments to see if there are any questions. I really hope this is made into a video as well so I can show it to my friends and we can have a girls' craft night making this. Well, happily, this recording will post, so you can absolutely watch this video afterwards as much as you like, rewind and back up. So I don't need to make a separate video. This is the video. You can actually go through and rewatch it as many times as you want once it posts. But I will be making a series of formal finger loop braid tutorials. They will be on my website or on my Patreon. Those will be behind a paywall. So yeah, I do plan on actually making a tutorial for all of these, but in a more condensed form. So the free version is going to be these live streams, and the paid for version will be the nice condensed tutorials. Yeah, which you can get on my website, thecreativecontessa.com. But I will prompt, these streams are going to be left up. You can come back and rewatch it anytime you want. Okay, so now remember, you always want to tighten a little bit. Right, and if you recall from last week's, oh, my tightener left. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate for you because he made these loops really long. He always makes them really long. So you might recall I said there's a toe tightening technique. Well, I'm going to do that now. And unfortunately, that means I dropped one. Okay, so now we have 3 on one hand and 4 on the other. We're now going to migrate all of these up. So A takes B, C takes D, excuse me, B takes C, C takes D, right? Okay, and then I'm going to grab across here. I'm going to grab from my right hand to my left hand. So now we have 4 on this hand, and I'm going to lower the loops on, for some reason my lowering fingers aren't working, lower the loops on my right hand, right? Okay, so basically what happens is the basic pattern is we're actually kind of bringing the loops here and then wrapping it back around, rotating the loops this way, then bringing it back around. That's the basic motion for this whole thing, and that's what creates the twisting effect, and that's what creates that ridge that runs up the outside. So this one is actually pretty easy. Okay, so it's the exact same thing. We're back where we started. Okay, I'm going to go through and all the way and around, outside all of the braids, outside everything, right? Like outside this hand, outside my right hand, outside my left hand, grab that loop straight across, bring it back around. Okay, we now have 3, we now have 4, we tighten, we tighten, and then we migrate up, we migrate up, we migrate up, we pull across, we migrate down, we migrate down, we migrate down. I don't know why those fingers are being so challenging right now. Tighten. And now we do it again. all the way around, grab this loop straight across, bring it back, pull it out, migrate up, migrate up, migrate up, pull across, migrate down, migrate down, migrate down. Tighten. And I might not have to tighten this much, but it's a habit I do. I consider this part of my Pilates workout. Normally I do this standing, honestly. I never do this sitting. I always do this standing. So this is a total body workout. Okay, so once again, A goes all the way around, or A goes through B, we go all the way around, we grab A on the left hand, pull it all the way around, and up and through. We migrate up, migrate up, migrate up. Pull across, migrate down. I don't know why my fingers are being so stiff today. It's really weird. My fingers are normally never this stiff. Okay. Okay, and then we just repeat that again and again. So like I said, this one goes super fast, actually. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my fingers. So what is everyone else working on this morning? This afternoon, evening, and where is everyone coming in from? Tighten. Yeah, this is a little long for me to do without someone there.
Okay.
Could you tighten it? I think we need to raise this one.
Raise it.
Yeah, because it doesn't have a broad, I think a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Nope. Okay. Yeah. So this is called a condrape for those who missed that. I don't know why my fingers are being so weird and stiff. Normally I have no problem raising and lowering the loops without having to use a second finger.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Yeah. Oh, probably because I'm trying to keep them in camera. So I've got my condottiere at the end beating the pattern down for me because it's too long for me to reach easily and stay on camera with my toe. So you don't have to do the departed bows. You can do this in just one color. I think it creates a very elegant effect, actually. Okay. And tighten.
You can see the pattern starting.
Yeah, you can see the pattern starting to form. And I find what we call finger loop braiding, lace making as was in the 15th century, to be very therapeutic and very relaxing. Oh, shoot. Nope, this is not a good angle. No, not a good spot. It is exactly where I need to be working. Well, no, but they want to see my hands.
Yeah. I'm trying to do something.
Okay. We're trying to figure out where to put this
Unfortunately, my
camera so that you can see both angles. Watching from Martinsburg, West Virginia. Nice. I am a Delaware girl originally, so that is vaguely from my part of the world. I don't know. Where are my hands?
How's that look?
Let me check. I don't know. I don't think that angle is very, I don't know. Everyone, we're trying different things out here to see what's useful for a live stream format. What about that angle, the second angle, the side angle? Is that useful, or was it better when it was straight over top? Let me know, please. Yeah. So for those just joining, I will go ahead and break this down again so you can see. This one's really nice and easy to both do and demonstrate and explain. Okay.
And it's starting to come together down there.
Yeah, it's starting. You can actually see that. The other nice thing about this braid is the visual happens really quickly. You see your progress sooner than on some other laces, shall we say. Okay, so For those just joining who would like a step-by-step review, so we have four bows on one hand, three bows on the other, and we actually start by sticking A through B and going all the way around the outside of all the loops to your left hand, grabbing A on the left hand, unreversed, bringing it all the way across and then out again, tighten, and then we migrate the loops on the left hand up, up, and up, grab across from the right hand, and then migrate down, down, and down.
How's that look?
Straight over top is better, they say. Let me see. My husband and I were painting up shields before the stream. Nice. Is shield painting something you can't do during the stream? I do encourage people to be as creative as possible together with me. Yeah. Oh, someone else is working on a lining of a bodice for a Tudor petticoat. Very nice. Very nice. I think they want them to be straight over.
Yeah, well, I'm trying.
We're trying some things. Okay, so once again, A goes through B on the right hand, like this. We go around all the loops. Grab A from the left hand, come all the way around, migrate up, up, and up, pull across, migrate down, down, and down, and tighten. With toe help, in my case. Okay. Once again, A goes through B around the outside of all the loops. We grab, we go up, up, and up, grab across, go down, down, and down. Sorry, that's probably dizzying.
There we go.
Okay. Oh, that's not good. Okay.
Well, that does not
Nope, that does not work at all. Unfortunately, there's no way to turn that camera off while you're doing all of that.
Mhm.
I think you should just go back to the way it was. Yeah, it's not strong enough, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're a YouTuber, you're basically a one-person production company and you have to do everything yourself. That is normally an entire team of people, therefore you do yourself.
It's some up and down. You can really see the hands there. Cleavage.
Oh yeah, that's not great.
As you fix it in camera.
Okay. Yeah, so May Day. Has anyone actually gone out and done any May celebrations this year, medieval or otherwise? Medieval in the medieval period, May is referred to as the lusty month of May.
Let move your hands forward. That still be comfortable.
Yeah, sure. Yep. May is referred to affectionately as the lusty month of May. And it's called that because it's the first month in Europe where the weather in the Middle Ages was reliably good. And it's also another reason that we're pretty certain it was the lusty month of May is that we've just finished, come May, we have finished 40 days of Lenten fasting and ember days. And remember that fasting in the medieval period is not just food. Unfortunately, it's like right in front of me. The camera is.
It is.
It's not just food. It's also certain other fun time activities, shall we say, of a more private nature. And so when May comes around, there's a lot of really built up passions, shall we say. And that means that there are certain energies that are bursting forth and really ready to be unleashed. And so on the courtly level, of course, this was problematic because women aren't, especially unmarried women, aren't just supposed to be going out and courting, shall we say, in a more physical manner. And so in the courts of Europe, they developed all sorts of very ritualized ways of expressing sexuality and sexual energy in a safe way, shall we say, in a way that would not result in Still loads of places doing maypole. So maypole is not a medieval practice. Maypole dancing is not a medieval practice at all, actually, not with the ribbons. So yeah, I'll actually talk about maypoles then. Maypoles, of course, are actually the idea of cutting down a tree and bringing it into the town goes back pretty far. We have documentable evidence of it in mainland Europe as far back as the 13th century. I wasn't able to document that practice further back than that. And people would dance around the tree and they would decorate the tree. They would put garlands on it, they would put flowers on it. Ribbons are a later addition, and that makes sense because ribbons in the Middle Ages were super expensive. So it was more likely that you would paint them or decorate them in garlands. And people would do that before the tree was before the maypole was erected. So there was no dance to decorate the tree. It was simply it was put up already decorated, and then people would dance around it. Right. And then people would, do all sorts of fun, have all sorts of fun around it. If you look at medieval imagery of maypoles, of people dancing around a so-called maypole, often it's not decorated at all, actually, in certain places. And they're never holding ribbons. Ribbons are a Victorian invention, actually. Is the earliest documentable evidence of that, because it was a reinvented practice, right? The Puritans, a Victorian English invention, no less, that then spread throughout Europe because it became very popular. There was, in the 19th century, there was this big move to repopularize what people consider, or there was a big move towards traditional, historical, like exploring so-called medieval practices again, but they weren't necessarily exploring real medieval practices. They were exploring what they imagined were medieval practices. And so that's where the dancing around the maypole with ribbons came from. The Puritans outlawed and any place where there, especially where the Reformation happened, where you had non-Catholic churches in power or governments in power, a lot of May Day practices were outright banned because they were associated not with paganism but with the Catholic Church, which was considered pagan. So, so what that means is that's why a lot of these practices, like a lot of May Day practices, people think they're pagan. It's not because they were, because most of them weren't. We can't even document that in most cases. They're referred to as pagan or considered pagan now because the Puritans and a bunch of the different Reformation churches believed that anything associated with the Catholic Church was pagan, and they called it pagan. So, all of those traditions that were part of May Day observances under the Catholic Church, including the Marian cult, by the way, a lot of the very stylized, lusty month of May rituals were also carried out at the church level. The worshiping of the lady as the daisy, but it was transmuted into a religious practice and into a more ephemeral practice by applying it to the cult of the Virgin Mary, which of course was extremely pagan as far as the Reformation churches were concerned. Yeah. So yeah, maypole dancing is actually not a medieval tradition, or maypole ribbon dancing is not a medieval tradition. Dancing around a May tree absolutely is, but not by the nobility. I have zero evidence that nobles actually engaged in any such activities. It always seems to have been the townsfolk or the peasants, or the peasants. Yeah. Yeah, could you
Also, May is things like lambing season, etc. in the UK, plus old religions in the UK around fertility. Last comment was someone in chat, not to you.
Okay. Great.
It's between coats on the shield painting. There was mention of Fingerloop braiding. Oh, she's doing her own small 3-loop setup. Her child, 7-year-old is.
Nice.
Amusingly, when I first learned to do this, I was in a class in, where was that? Belgium? No,
Netherlands. It was
Yeah,
at it was at the Powder House in Delft.
So there was me and like 10 8-year-old kids.
Yeah, that's true. The first Fingerloop braiding class my condottiero ever participated in was at an SCA event in a 17th century powder house in Delft, and a beautiful site. And yeah, it was basically just children doing the class.
And me.
Yeah, I've taught 5-year-olds to do Fingerloop braid. Lace making, as it's called in the 15th century.
It's unfair. Their tiny fingers mean they get further in the loop.
Yeah, well, let's not get into the perks of tiny fingers in handcrafts and why there's still a tiny finger economy, production economy in certain parts of the world. Yeah. Just migrating along. So yeah, this the nice you can even see with when you have the long anchor on the chondric, you can actually see the way the twisting is happening. Now remember, when you're doing your anchor for finger loop braiding, you want to make sure your anchor is strong. So don't use weak thread, don't use weak yarn, use triple or quadruple in some cases, because if your anchor breaks, then your braid is going to have a big messy spot and you may or may not be able to pick it up again. So word to the wise.
From experience.
From experience. Learn from my own tears and pain. Don't have your own. So I keep a bag. Some of you have heard this before, but I'll say it again. I keep a bag of finger loop braiding just in my kit and around of pieces I've worked on, maybe not even the most perfect pieces, for practical purposes. So that if I need, and I use them in my daily life, not just in my medieval life. If I need if I need to tie off a bag of chips or crackers or beans or pasta or whatever, I use the finger loop braids that I've kind of accrued over time, right? If I need a tie for my hair, I use finger loop braiding or I use one of these laces, as it were. If I'm doing medieval encampment and I have a pavilion, which I do, and I need a tie for something, like I need to tie up a wall hanging or a tapestry or even the tent flap bed hangings, whatever. I use these bits of finger loop braiding that I accrue over time from demonstrations and practice. So even the imperfect ones, you can find a good use for. Just keep your own little pouch of laces, as it's called. And of course, I have my emergency pouch of laces for my gowns so that when invariably the lace that's in each gown falls out, I then have a backup.
Or because she's hard on things, they snap.
Okay, I'm not just hard on things. I actually wear my clothes like real people. So eventually, even the really strong laces that are created by this process of finger loop braiding, even they will eventually wear away, but it takes a long time. I mean, the reality is that these laces produce something that's beautiful, but the lace making process creates strength by interweaving all of these bows together. So it's not just pretty, it's strong, and it's stronger than if the components were just more durable than if the components were just, loosely together. So you can see once you get going with this one, it really moves quickly, which makes this one particularly satisfying. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. Sorry,
Thumbs up it.
thumbs up. I hate that I have to say that, but that is the economy, the ecosystem in which I must function. See,
No.
oh, that'll be a minor error. So
Maybe.
Well, the problem with the chondrake is there's a significant amount of twist. So how much can it be said that Christianity was somewhat inclusive of ethnic pagan cultural traditions, in your opinion? Early Christianity was massively inclusive of pagan and other customs and traditions, and sometimes on purpose. And I don't mean, there's a whole debate about how intentional or malicious it was, and I don't think it was malicious. Intentional possibly, but the reality is that there are certain times of year, depending on where your latitude, where you live, there are certain times of year that will just be better and specifically important for humans for different reasons, because our psychology is kind of the same, and because of the weather patterns, the amount of daylight you have. So there's going to be a tendency for any given set of religious practices, no matter the religion, to want to incorporate those times of year into their worship. And there's only, so many ways you can reasonably observe those times of year, given the conditions of the planet Earth and the limitations of humans and our physics, our physiognomy, etc. So yes, it is, it seems that since time immemorial, as far as we have records going back, um, people in certain parts of the world have been celebrating certain times of years in different ways, no matter what the prevailing religion has been or is or was.
It's amusing. You can tell where I'm helping you
Yeah.
and where I've stepped away.
Yeah. So there, there certainly are, there's secretive and there's accretive and, and these, you can get into real heated debates with people about that question actually. But my feeling, especially studying the May Day traditions, is that in most places in Western Europe anyway, it is possible that they were continuing, in Southern Europe with traditions that had been around since the Roman Empire, in sort of Central and Northern Europe, depending on where you were, and traditions that had been there, with the Gauls and the Celts, and but by the time you get to say the 15th century, it's very clear if you read the records, which I was, that they've lost the connection. There's no more the what am I trying to say? The activities have lost a connection with the spiritual, except for the parts that have been sort of co-opted by, say, the cult of Mary, and it's become very secular. In fact, there's one poet who says, I think it's Eustache Deschamps, who says that we should go, talking about the Maying, bringing in the May, that we should go in the old custom and go and observe the customs as of old, right? Like they know that these are customs, they know that people have been doing them since forever, but they don't know why anymore. But it's a custom and we do it and it's fun, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Good question. Yeah, that seems to be very obvious to me, but a lot of pagans seem to have the opinion that the Christians were extremely hostile. It's very interesting. Yeah, the early history of Christianity is interesting and extremely complex, and also it's not uniform, right? Early Christianity spread real quickly, real early on, and a lot of people in the West aren't even tracking the Eastern churches. Like they're not tracking the progress, the evangelization of the Apostle Thomas who went to India. They're not tracking Nestorian Christianity. They're not tracking the Syriac rites that end up moving eastward. So it's definitely hostile to paganism. That comes later, and it's not always uniform, and it's not as the records don't seem to it doesn't seem to be as cut and dry as certain people may want it to be. It never is. That's not history. History is not a cut and dried subject. If you want black and white, walk away from history. I don't know where to send you, but it's not history. It is, just like when you reach the upper echelons of the study of science and mathematics, it gets less and less black and white the more theoretical you get.
Can you do the thing? I'll go get you tea.
Can I do the thing? Yeah, from there I can do the thing. Yeah. Let me see. Some believe that the way that the very popular and adopted tradition of celebrating a Sicilian saint in Sweden, Santa Lucia, is because it fills a void after celebrating a Norse goddess, maybe Nana. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why not?
People like their stuff.
People like their stuff. And also there can be real parallels in origin stories, whether natural parallels or invented parallels. In Ireland, Philip from Irish Medieval History last week was saying that the Beltan, as I think he pronounced it, is the fire festival, and what they continue doing even through the Middle Ages, even though they weren't really observing it as a pagan tradition anymore, as a from a sense of worship, they were still doing the tradition. And what he's noted is that the process of driving your cattle through between two giant bonfires, some scientists actually apparently sat down and thought about it, and they think it might have had a real practical effect of removing parasites and lice and bacteria and fungus from the cows, killing them off and having a protective, an actually salubrious effect. So that, even though maybe briefly people may have tried to stop with this tradition of driving them through the fire because it was so-called pagan, and then they realized their cows were still dying, so they kept doing it anyway. So, right, there are some traditions that are given a religious connotation when originally they may have had a practical one, but humans have a tendency to want to find deeper meaning in everything. And so, there's every reason that something could start as a practical practice, so to say, and then someone views it or feels that it has a deeper or a higher level of meaning, and then it becomes imbued with that deeper, higher level of meaning, but the practical aspect is still there. Humans are always looking for ways to touch the intangible. And that's one of the things that really sets us apart, I think, from most of the other species of animals, is that we are always looking for ways to grasp the ungraspable. And so ritual is a way to do that. Right, it's like bringing in the May. Literally, they say that because in the especially in the courts, they would actually go out into the forest, into the meadows, into the glades, into the glens, and they would cut greenery, freshly sprung greenery, garlands and wreaths and ivy and branches and flowers, and they would bring them back inside. So they were literally bringing in the May, bringing it inside so that they could touch and feel and be surrounded by freshly sprung life, the renewal of the season in their own space. Well, damn it, that's what I get for talking too much. In their own space, right?
It even makes an appearance in Kingdom Come.
Yeah, bringing in the May makes an appearance in Kingdom Come Deliverance too, for those who are watching that or watching it or playing it.
Or there was something about a church. They put the sprig of the tree on that.
Right. The maypole, interesting, has, in the East, in Eastern Europe, it particularly in the 15th century, still had a protective connotation, not just as a symbol of love, but you'd actually put a maypole up, a may tree up in front of a home, not just in the town square, in front of someone's home as a sign of protection. Also, there's a tradition that you would put a may tree up in front of the home of someone who is a potential lover, but that could also tie into the protection idea. The protection racket, as it were, the maypole protection racket. What's happening? Just another comment. I am doing finger loop braiding. We are making a condrake, which makes a kind of piping. Actually, that can be used decoratively. It can also make a pretty lace for your garments. I've used it as that. Can make a pretty hair tie. It can make like if I were going to do another set of silk 15th century bed hangings, I would probably make a bunch of this and put it around the bottom edge. Darn it, I get for talking. It's okay. These the mess ups, as I call them, your mess up laces, these become your practical. These get added into your bag of laces. Sometimes, depending on the kind of lace, you can actually work your way out of it. You can the the imperfection can just get absorbed by the pattern, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's okay too. That is the advantage of doing it all in one color, though. You don't see the imperfections really at all.
Do they want to see? I could try and move it to where they can see the pattern now.
No, I think we're settled for now, so we'll.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's almost there.
Yeah, we're almost here. The pattern is almost in camera, so
it's creeping up.
Let me see. What would you say? When would you say the church no longer felt that they needed to include pagan feast in the church? When the heresy started being persecuted, like the Cathars? Oh my God, that's a really complicated question, Susan. You mean when did they no longer need to basically transform a pagan festival or feast into a so-called Christian one? I mean, that happened early on, right? They stopped doing that. But basically, by as far as I can tell, and I am not a complete expert on church history, so I just want to make that clear. But from what I have read and from what I can tell, by the first millennium, the church calendar was more or less established. right? And by the church calendar, I mean all of the different saints, the feasts, and the observances, with the exception of additions of saints who, come along later on, like feast celebrating Saint Clare and Saint Francis. Right. So yeah. But I mean, I think pretty much easily by the first millennium, that's probably mostly done because, Christianity has at that point basically settled into the northern areas. I mean, it had already been in Ireland. Ireland has had Christianity almost longer than anyone else, is the reality. Um, and it had already settled in the Isles and in the Norse parts of the world at that point. Most people don't realize that your average Norse trader and or Norse adventurer, aka a Viking, by the first millennium was probably Christian.
Possibly both.
Or both, some interesting hybrid flavor thereof. Yeah. And the ways in which those various Norse adventurers were converted are pretty interesting. There's some really fun stories about that. About, I think it was Rolf the Ganger, the, Rollo the Walker, the long-legged, who who I think it was he who was offered conversion, to the Duchy of Normandy to become the Duke of Normandy if he would A, convert, and B, protect the King of France from his fellow Norse adventurers. And part of the deal was that they got a new tunic as part of their baptism. And so a lot of his men were apparently going through 2 and 3 and 4 times to get baptized so they could get a new tunic. Because remember, this was in the 10th century, early 10th century, like 911-ish. So remember that in that time, a tunic was an expensive damned garment. And a new one especially. So to get a new one was a pretty big deal. I've been baptized 7 times today. Look at my complete wardrobe.
I just put on a pair of glasses and they don't recognize me.
That's right.
I call it my super tunic look.
Yeah. So other fun Maying traditions from on the courtly side of things, in France, they had really stylized the Maying pretty hard by developing the party of the flower and the party of the branch. The leaf, sorry, the party of the leaf, not the branch. And you would actually, on May Day, you would actually decide to which party you owed your allegiance. And for the rest of the year, you should defend your allegiance, the leaf or the flower, through poetry, basically through medieval rap battles. And, you would actually wear the emblem of your party upon your person, the flower or the leaf. So when you're looking at, say, 15th century French art depicting real people and their clothing, you might want to look more closely and see if you can determine if they're actually wearing the emblem of their party, either woven into the fabric or embroidered or as a badge. Because there's massive amounts of poetry talking about this flower and the leaf. Yeah, I don't
delete this ethereal person.
Yeah, I don't know what on earth happened there. That might have been one of those drops. That's interesting. And the ladies were often in Maying poetry are often metaphorized, allegorized with the daisy. So there's this whole idea that a daisy symbolizes a woman. So if you're reading medieval Maying poetry, or indeed any medieval poetry at all, and you encounter a reference to daisies, it's women. It's women. They're talking about women. It's ladies. The daisies are ladies. And so you might want to reread that poem in the context of ladies and see if that changes the action, shall we say, for what is happening. Yeah, there's Chaucer has a in his tale, I think it's on good women, tale of good women or something like that. He has this whole section that takes place, it opens up basically in May. And he talks about, he wakes up on the May morning and he goes down into the field, the meadow, and he's surrounded by all these beautiful daisies and how they're all new and fresh and ready to be plucked. It's not subtle.
Why am I getting a warm feeling?
Yeah, why am I getting a warm feeling?
There's-
Oh, absolutely. Women were absolutely very powerful in medieval Europe. And in fact, they lost a lot of that power during the Reformation. I mean, legally speaking, the Reformation was a bad time for women. They're in many places, they lost a lot of rights and a lot of laws got passed against them, and they became much less free. And in fact, once you get rid of the monasteries, that eliminates a key way in which medieval women could assert utter economic and personal independence, right? So in places where they no longer had monasteries, women had way fewer options for themselves as individuals and as, members of the economy. In medieval Europe, there are a lot of women fully participating in guild life, in craft life, running businesses, and that goes away as once the Reformation comes along and as the modern era wears on, that becomes less and less frequent. So yeah, I always tell people life was actually in many ways better for women in the Middle Ages than it was in the early modern era and before the modern era for certain. Most people don't realize that in America, in the United States of America, up until the 70s and even like up until the early 80s, women could not. I think I just getting too excited. I did something before I should have. Anyway, women could not get credit cards without a father or a husband
79.
signing for them.
So within
They
that-
couldn't get a mortgage. If they wanted any kind of birth control, they had to have a husband's consent for it. Right? That's up until 1980, for God's sake. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, sorry, Thomas. I booted them for half an hour because he annoyed me.
Let's see. Roses are red, violets are blue, people are pink, and branches are icky as a is a poem to the flower. Yeah, but there's a great 15th century English poem called the Flora and the Leaf. And it's basically this interest, it depicts these two parties, the maying parties of the flower and the leaf, but it's not subtle about which party they represent, the author probably represented, because it depicts the leaf party as being very noble and very modest and very productive and useful. And it depicts the flowers as being vain and rash and not acting logically. And it focuses on the way that the flower is very fleeting and transient and very short-lived, whereas leaves are there most of the year, and in the case of evergreens such as the laurel, they're there all year. And so the party of the leaf ends, the party of the flower in this poem ends up getting sunburnt while jousting, and they get overheated and they fall ill, they fall into a swoon, and the party of the flower graciously goes and helps them by providing them with medicinal leaves. Yeah. So it's a very interesting work. It's not a short poem, by the way. What is he trying to do?
Knock the chair off of my impromptu stand.
So don't anyone try to tell me that cats are not sentient. Our cats prove their sentience on a regular basis.
Annoying little fits.
Oh, Sky and Olive, hello. Thank you. Welcome for joining us. Yeah, it's lovely to listen to people who are well informed about a topic, and especially, en especial hace mucho que no he aprendido. Yeah, and especially because I haven't learned. It's been a long time since I learned anything about the Middle Ages. Miguel, de nada, con placer.
Really get into the box underneath it.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're looking to recreate a May Day event, a typical courtly day would seem to be that you rise at dawn with your courtiers, you get fully dressed in all the splendor, and you should be wearing green, and you should hopefully it's new garments, because May was one of the times of year when retainers were given new garments, livery, so to say, by whoever their liege lord or lady was. Whoever's house they served, and then they would go out en masse, probably on horseback, at least as the depictions on horseback. They would go out to the forest and to the meadows. They would collect greenery and they would decorate them, make wreaths of flowers and garlands of leaves, and they would decorate themselves with wreaths upon their heads, chaplets of flowers on their head, and belts and baldricks about their selves, about their persons. And then there would be a joust that would be overseen by whoever is, top ranking. And there would be some dancing, and then they would fetch more greenery and return back to their castle for a feast and more dancing. That seems to be a typical May Day. Oh yeah, my condottiere is going to show you the most typical depiction of the Maying. That is the beautiful hours of Jean Duc de Berry, who was one of the royal peers of France and a major bibliophile. And so if you've ever seen that image, that is the most famous picture of the medieval Maying. That is a Maying party. And of course, you would, if you were in a court, you would spend large amounts of money on the Maying, specifically on your garments. And as the Middle Ages wore on, the amount of money spent on Maying garments became more and more until, so even Charles VI of France in 1389, there's an entry in his expense accounts for 24 houppelans for his closest top-ranking retainers, and that these houppelans should be green and they should look just like the king's, basically, so they can all look the same, right? But then, come 1401, suddenly there's an entry for 253 green houppelans in all different kinds for different ranks in his household, but so that with the livery of his personal livery, which is a Plantagenet, actually, Charles VI, King of France, his livery was actually also the Plantagenet broom, the broom plant. No, go away. Sorry, I was shouting at my cat who was just attacking my. No, why are you like this? So my cats, if I even break out spools of yarn or floss or anything that is vaguely thready and string-like, they will awaken from the deepest slumber and come and find me. So now you can start to see the twist. It's a little bit strange in the camera, and I think it's because I'm not pulling tightly enough. I should have been pulling more tightly, maybe, that the red is showing so much, which is weird.
It's an interesting effect, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting effect.
If you could duplicate that.
And you will notice with any finger loop braid that if you let it just ride naturally, it will get tighter and tighter and tighter as you go, instead of maintaining that tension. Which means if you want the tension to be the same throughout and for the pattern size to be the same throughout, then you will sort of need to loosen the tension as you get closer to the ends, and try to force a harder tension earlier on. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. That's really weird. No! Oh, it could be every time a cat has come along and pulled on it. The cat is up to mischief. Yes, he is. Oh, yeah. So I would at some point actually like to organize a medieval Maying event. I just don't know when I would or where I would do that, but I would like to do that because I think it would be great, especially if I could get horses for it. That would be fantastic. And we all get up at dawn, and like today would have been such a glorious day for the Maying. It is just oh my God. Dawn came, I was wide awake at dawn, so I know. Dawn came so beautiful this morning. It really did. And, we would dress ourselves in our nice new green Maying garments with all the embroidery and the appliques, and we would ride out into the forest. And of course, we would be accompanied by servants who would bring things like food for the picnic, and turkey rugs, as they're called in 17th century English, so we can repose upon them comfortably out in the forest. And we would go and cut flowers and vines, and we would make chaplets. And it's funny, one of the poems, one of Eustache Deschamps' poems, actually talks about these garlands of flowers being very very natural, very unartificial, in the sense that they're not built on a frame. He actually he says sans équisse, without a frame. And so that makes it, that makes it even more natural. So it's not this, artificial natural thing. It's just kind of a natural thing made with as little artifice as possible. So we would make chaplets for ourselves, and then we would go for a walk through the forest together. And then we would come back for refreshments, and there would be, if not a joust, then at least a deed of arms on foot. And there would, of course, be dancing, and there would be a poetry contest. Everyone should extemporize, in quotes, a poem in honor of the Maying, by which I mean probably everyone will have prepared their poem in advance and memorized it.
Especially if it's Petrarchan.
Yeah. And then we go back to the castle for a feast, a proper feast in the castle, but with all of our greens that we then use to decorate the space. That would be my May Day event, or my Maying, bringing in the May event, the lusty month of May. Yeah. Oof. And it's funny because, you know, you think about places like modern day Spain and where they were in the 15th century. And even though they were kind of at the end of the Reconquista and therefore things were a little crazy there, the court of Castile was still fully exploring ultra expensive court spectacle. I found an account of Enrique. I forget which Enrique. There's so many Enriques in Castilla. Anyway, sort of 1430s Spain, an account of the celebration of the Maying. And let me tell you, this King of Castile went all out. He went full classical. He had himself dressed up as Apollo and his men as, his fellow demigods. And there was a parade with floats and performance dancing, and it was this immense, expensive affair, all to celebrate the Maying. Talk about taking it to the next level. So it was definitely interesting to find that Spanish course. I have to do more research into medieval Spain. I mean, it's easy for me because Spanish is one of my languages, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, and I don't know why. It's really funny that I went first to Italy, really, which at that time I didn't speak Italian, and then went to France, where I do speak French. And I've only recently sort of taken an interest, and really deep interest, in looking into medieval Spain. I really want to be immortal so I can just keep exploring all of this stuff. Like, I would never get bored. There's always something to learn. My cat is still attacking my finger loop braid. This is great. Okay,
You're down to the knots.
I am. Okay, so I'm actually down to the knots.
You want me to cut it?
Yeah. Okay. So, damn it. No, go away. Would you please pick her up?
No, this is too amusing.
No, it's not amusing. She's using her claws and it hurts.
Okay.
Do you though?
I do now.
Okay.
Oh.
So here is, sorry, I've got up here where this camera is. Here is the finished braid. Until all of the challenge spots. Oh, yeah. You can tell the spots where so this is where I was having issues tamping it down because it was a little too far away from my toe. And this is where I started having someone to tamp it down. Right, trying to figure out where this camera is. Yeah. This is where I was starting to have someone to tamp it down, and you can tell where he went away and when he came back. Yeah. Like I said, normally I do this standing, and darn it, what's going on
You
camera?
don't have cameras and
Yeah,
stuff.
no, and I don't have cameras and stuff in the way, and then I can use my full toe. Yeah, but at the end, it got really nice. See, right at the end, look at that. Isn't that perfect and beautiful?
It is.
Also the part less likely, no, don't torture the cat like that. Also the part less likely to get played with by cats because it was closest to my fingers. Hello, Liv, welcome. Yeah, so if you do this in one color, then you don't have to worry about it showing up. If you, any errors showing up, rather, you can, and here, I'll show you the side-by-side comparison of the start versus the end. Yeah, hold on. There we go. Yeah, the start versus the end. That's it. No, go away. Goodness gracious. And you know, so when you're doing this yourself, you don't have to mark A, B, and C and D on your fingers for yourself. I did that for your, so you could see, you know, which fingers were which when we did the initial setup. In fact, you don't want to put Sharpie on your hand because it's now on the ends of the loops, which doesn't really matter that much. Let me show you what I do for the end of the loop, also the end of the lace. So, you know, you've got all of this stuff hanging there. And if this were not such a big yarn, if it were a fine, if this were not, I swear to God, she's a wildcat. If this were not such big yarn, then this would be, it would be thinner. And I would actually just twist this, I would wax it, and this would be what would go inside of a point, for instance, inside of an egglet shape, right? Or if I'm going to sew this onto something, then this is what gets tucked either into the seam or tucked under and whip stitched down so that there's a nice, neat finish and you don't have raw edges sticking out. So never cut this. I never ever cut these. Sorry, I never ever, right here, these cameras are, it's mirroring, so it's doing something weird. I never ever cut these loops, right? I always either leave them or, and this one's pretty good at staying. If this were a braid where it felt like it was starting to come undone, I would actually, before I cut the anchor, I would break this down into 3 and braid it off just to secure it until I'm ready to do something with it. So that's how I finish my braids. Right. Depends on the application. Okay, well, let's do another one. Not another Condrake, not another Departed. Bring me some yarn.
What do you want to do?
Okay. Does anyone have any braiding requests that they would like to see? Unfortunately, it can't be a 2-person because we're now set up for 1 person, so that's the way it's going to be. No, go away. Let's do a lace. We'll do the lace bastion. It's another, it's a 5er. Oh, it's a bicolor one.
It'll take me a couple minutes to set up.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna do something really fast. Well, here, I'll set it up. Give me the loops. Okay, so we're now going to do another departed one, shall we say? The lace bastion, and the lace bastion produces something that looks like that. It's trying to figure out the angle there. Yeah, so it's got one color down the center and the edges are in a different color.
Get rid of
Yeah.
the littlest one.
Yeah. So we actually only have 2 bicolor loops. Oh, they're all bicolor. What the heck does that mean?
Huh?
No, yeah. So we've got 5 loops. This is a 5 loop braid. So for those of you who know the basic 5 loop, this will come very naturally. And what we're changing here is the initial, the colors, right? So here we have, we're going to go with red and gold again, because that's what I have on hand. Is this still here? Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to need 5 loops. We're going to need 5 bicolor loops. So you get to actually see me set it up this time. Let me put this across my lap a little more blockingly. Trying to create as white a field as possible. Feel like I'm creating a surgical field. Okay. We need a bigger, I think we need a bigger claw.
This might be one.
Oh, this is super strong. Or the first one was nice and strong. Okay, so I'm not going to make this one very long because I want it to be a demo piece, not a take forever piece. Okay, so this is how I make my bicolor loops. I basically run them together, and I need snips.
Oh, where did I put this?
So I basically just run threads together like this, right? And knot the ends. And we do this with an overhand knot, right? Just wrap it around your finger, curl the ends under, and then pull off, and you create a little half knot. Like that. Okay. And Then I snip these together and put a little half knot there, just like that. Now you want to make certain that this knot is really secure, because if these knots come out while you're tugging on them, as you will be if you're making a lace, you'll be sad. So don't make them secure. Unfortunately, depending on the thread, those knots can also, in fact, cause pain. They can if they can actually cause some blistering. But I'm pretty certain that silk women, and it was nearly always women who were recorded as doing this kind of work. I'm pretty certain that silk women had amazing calluses on their fingers. Okay. Making our knots. Yeah, so silk women are an example of, women in the workforce, in the crafting workforce in the Middle Ages. And we know that there are silk women in the Italies. We know there are silk women in various parts of France, because remember, for a lot of the Middle Ages, France is not one place. Haven't looked into silk women in Spain yet, in the various polities that count as that are now Spain. That would be my next avenue of research, I suppose, in this particular area. And of course, in London, there are silk women. We I haven't found documentary evidence, and I'll be talking about on my live stream tomorrow morning at the crack of dawn here, 6 a.m., which is going to be 5 p.m. New York City time, um, 11 p.m. Germany, and some other time here in, I guess that'll just be 6 a.m. here in Seoul. Anyway, I will be talking about medieval Irish textiles, um, extant ones, from a new book I just got, my learnings from that book. And we will be talking a little bit about the finger loop braiding, about lace making in medieval Ireland based on the archaeology from that. So that will be interesting. But so we do have some evidence of a little preview of that. We do have some evidence of, there being a lace making industry in medieval Ireland, Waterford specifically, I believe. I have to review my notes on that. Because they actually found a lace that was in the middle of being made. It hadn't been finished yet, which means it wasn't imported. You're not gonna buy a half-assed finished lace. You're going to buy a whole lace, which means if it's half finished and it's in the ground from a layer from 13th century Waterford, it must have been being made there. But unfortunately, I haven't found documentary evidence of silk women in Ireland yet. And unfortunately, I may never find the documentary evidence because of that massive archival fire in Dublin in the early 1920s. But there's definitely, we have evidence of silk narrowwares being used and existing in Ireland from the archaeological evidence. So that's always nice to know, when these things really are just as interconnected as you expect them to be. Okay, so I've got 4 bows.
Hedgehog today to make you tea.
That's true. I've got 4 bows. 5th bow coming up. Is it for clothing? Caravaggio. I'm sorry, I missed. Is what for clothing? The lace, or the lace that we're doing, the lace bastion, or baston, the lace baston. If that is what we're talking about, we actually don't know. This one could easily be used for lacing a garment. It could be used for trim. Pretty much all of these laces seem to have some kind of clothing related application, I will say. Is that the cone mangler? Oh, wait, there's 3. Oh, are you trying the kitties? Yeah, we do have 3. Yeah, we definitely totally have 3. Yeah, the cone mangler, she's talking about the Nana Hennin. Yeah, that's probably the one who was mangling the laces. Absolutely. 100%.
Your twitchy witches.
No. So some poor person's lost project. Remember to finish your to-do box, otherwise it will end up in a museum. Yeah, exactly. Twitchy witch, 1,000,000%. If I were to die today and this apartment were to somehow become a time capsule that gets discovered in 1,000 years, they're not even going to know where to start. They're going to be so confused.
They're going to need a museum.
Okay, so here we have our 5 our 5 laces departed, our 5 bows departed, as it were. And the lace baston is different in its setup from the condrake in that it's actually an inverted setup. I'll demonstrate what I mean, because words mean nothing, right? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to anchor. Yeah, I guess.
Oh, are you gonna? I always tie the knot to the end of the rope first, and you're gonna anchor it.
I am, but that's part of the anchoring process. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I thread it through the loops and then I anchor it.
Yes, that's all part of the anchoring process for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we actually have 3 of these oriented in one direction, and then 3 oriented in the other direction. So I'm going to set up the laces that way. By which I mean I've lined 3 of them up to be like this, with red on my left side, yellow on the other.
3 and 2, right?
3 and 2, yeah. And then the other 2 I will set up the opposite, like this, because this is how they start on my hand. And my theory is that this will make it less tangled and knotty and easier to just put onto my fingers once we get this done. Okay, so here's kind of from above. This is how that color scheme looks with the bows departed. Okay, and now I'm going to run this around.
Hello, name I can't pronounce.
I'm going to go ahead and do my anchor.
Something X.
Okay. Hello. Oh, looks like Chinese characters from this distance. I can't, the characters are so small, I can't necessarily, so we'll need to be much closer.
Hold your arm straight out. I'm gonna tie it first, and then I'm gonna
okay.
move it.
Okay, I'm gonna, my condottiere is going to anchor things, and then we'll bring it closer, right? Okay, so the initial setup on this is going to be 5. So 2 on one hand, 3 on the other. And there's kind of, on any 5 bow braid, there's this constant tension with each hand wanting 3 loops, but of course there's only 5, so there will always be a fight. It's like this, it feels almost cosmic in the nature of the struggle for the balance of power. And maybe I've been doing this too long and have thought too hard about it while zenning out doing my braiding. But anyway, so we're going to start with 3. What did you find now? Oh, that's the wind. That's not the cat. Welcome for those who are just joining. We're about to start a lace baston. We're just getting set up. That's why my hand is stretched out here. Okay, so maybe a little bit closer, just a tiny bit. Okay, so we start with the laces. We're going to start with our 3 on the one hand, like this. Try to make my field as white as possible. I'm going to get a bigger, next week I'll have a bigger white cloth available, and we're just going to drape this whole area like it's a big surgical suite. Okay, and then, oh God, okay. And then we're going to, on the other hand, we have the inverse, right? So on the left hand, in this case, this is just how I'm going to start. It doesn't really matter how you start. We've got the red on top. Okay. And on the right hand, we have yellow on top. And just going to take a look to make sure that I remember this correctly. It's been a while since I've done the lace baston. But yeah, it's all reversed. Okay, so this is basically a reversed 5-loop braid. Okay. So basically, to start, we take the hand that has 2, which in this case is my right hand. We line up B and C. So if we remember, pointer index finger is A, middle finger is B, ring finger is C. That's how it goes in this period. And we're actually going to line up B and C to make a corridor. Okay, like this. Don't do that. I'm just demonstrating. Make a corridor, and then we're going to stick A through that corridor, and we're going to grab C, the bottom of C, reversed. So if you grab the top, remember, it's unreversed of a bow. It's unreversed. If you grab the bottom, it's reversed. We grab the bottom, and you'll see it twists it. That's the reversal process. And we pull that through, and we pull B out. We migrate down, and we pull. Okay. Now, we repeat that on the other side. Create a corridor with B and C. A goes through, grabs C reversed, meaning the bottom of C, pulls it back out. B comes back out. Migrate B and A. On the right hand, migrate B to C, and A to B. And pull down.
We're from the United States, but we're currently visiting Korea.
Yeah. Yes, I'm from the United States and we are doing a long visit in Korea. Yep. What we're demonstrating now is a 15th century, what is modernly called Fingerloop braiding, but note that this exact technique is used in medieval Korea and medieval Japan. Isn't that exciting? And it probably makes its appearance all along the Silk Road in between, but I haven't researched those interim areas to prove that for certain. Yeah. Okay, so we line up C and B, A goes through, we grab C left, reversed, pull it out, migrate down on the left hand and pull. And that's the whole process. And you just kind of go through and keep doing that. And I'll try to go slowly at first to demonstrate it a little bit here. If you have questions, let me know. Yeah, so Fingerloop braiding has an ancient history. We actually have the earliest that I have discovered myself, or that I have encountered in the literature, in the research, in the archaeological reports, dates to the 4th century BC in Austria, Hallstatt, in the salt mines where they keep finding all sorts of great stuff that's really well preserved. And it could absolutely is likely even to go back further than that. And I haven't done a thorough survey of literature throughout the whole world, archaeological literature on the topic throughout the whole world, to really figure out exactly how far back it goes and how widespread it is. But we have in medieval Europe, we have archaeological evidence everywhere, in Tallinn, in Prague, in the Balkans, in the Holy Roman Empire, what's now Austria and Germany, Italy. Oh, okay. So I got to demonstrate crying. Okay, so remember I said if you don't do your knots well enough, they will come undone. Came undone. So you definitely want to make sure your knots are good and tight and that they're not just going to slip out. And I didn't, and that's on me. So there it is. Now, the
So yellow should be on top.
yellow should be on top, maybe. Okay. Okay. So we'll see. We'll see how obvious that mistake is or not. The nice thing about this one, though, is that you should always have the same orientation on each hand. I'll show you what I mean by that. So no matter where you are in the braiding process, one hand will always have yellow up, in this case, yellow because of yellow and red, and the other hand will always have red up, right? And because that's just the way this works. So you can tell if you've made a mistake and just kind of fix it if the color's not right. Like if I had this situation with on my right hand where red is up and yellow is up on the next loop, I would know that's not right and I would fix. So that is one of the benefits of this kind of braid.
Hi, Linda.
Linda, hello. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Hit that thumbs up. And if you have any questions, let me know. And if you need me to slow down and re-demonstrate the braid, let me know. Now, the nice thing about this one, it goes quickly and you can already see the pattern forming here. So this is a lace baston and it is a 5-bow lace. So, the 5-bow is the basic lace that I teach everyone to start with. And that's because there are so many derivatives of the 5-bow lace that having that one set of skills allows you to easily modify it for like 7 or 8 different laces.
And for any of those fighters out there, I use it for lacing for my armor. It's super strong.
Yeah, so these laces are absolutely used for armor points. We talked about the farsetti, the doublets at the beginning, and the short I just put out on Medieval Knights, how Medieval Knights dress. Go check that out. The laces that are used in those to lace on your harness, your armor, and your mail, and all those bits. This is a technique that will make that. So if you are a man at arms or a woman at arms, a practitioner of medieval martial arts, then this is absolutely a skill you should have, unless you want to pay someone else to make your points for you.
But it's easy and fun.
But it's easy and fun, and it's something you can do if you want while watching a movie or TV or just chatting with friends, right? So I absolutely recommend learning Fingerloop braiding. And I do teach workshops, both live and via Zoom. If you ever want something more in depth and more personal where you can actually ask me for tips.
And if you're a patron, you can.
Oh, yeah. And for my patrons and channel members, I've actually provided you with bonus content such as recordings of past workshops, finger loop braiding, dance, sewing, all sorts of extra content there. So if you wish to support my channel in a more financial way, you get perks with that. And so you have access to a massive catalog of Patreon and member only content, extra tutelage. We do live sessions together. We do Zoom sessions actually with my patrons and channel members where I can actually see you and talk to you, and you can show me your work and I can give you feedback. More personal than a live stream where I can talk at you and you can chat at me. The next Patreon/channel member live stream is actually coming up this week. We will be doing a Zoom session in historic Yeongju, so in a medieval Korean capital, and we will be in one of the most beautiful pieces of architecture possibly in the world. I will be demonstrating techniques, finger loop braiding and hand sewing, and we'll be chatting and just having a really good time. And my patrons and channel members will you'll get to, if you are one of those people, you'll get to actually ask me to demonstrate any technique you like, show me your work, and I will give you feedback on it. It should be a good time.
Takeda.
Yeah, been waiting 3 years for my wife to get more points for my armor done. Takeda. Maybe it's time to just break down and learn to do it yourself. So this one would make a really good point for armor, especially Takeda. If perhaps that seems like a Japanese name to me, actually. This would make especially good for if one were doing medieval Japanese harness because of the two colors, especially. Yeah. And we do know for a fact, oh, thank you, Andre, appreciate it. We do know for a fact that finger loop braiding was a thing that was done in medieval Japan. Found this great 15th century sketch, might be of a watercolor even, of a woman doing 5-loop finger loop braids, just like this. She looks Japanese and also in Japanese clothing, unlike me right now.
Yeah, you don't look very Japanese.
I don't look very Japanese, no. Right. And so you can see that once you get the skill down, this goes really quickly. It doesn't have to take long at all. The setup actually takes the longest, which is why, in my opinion, I recommend doing really, really long laces, long bows to make long laces. And how can you do that? That becomes a 2-person operation, really long ones, because then you need a second person to beat the pattern back, because
Like
you want the
this.
laces. Yeah, exactly. Like this. Just like that. Oh, what did I do? Like, I don't know what's happening here. Yeah. And tap, 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 except that far away,
Not that close.
Not that close. They would be far away. Oh, and I did want to demonstrate that. Well, maybe in another one. In another one, I will demonstrate. The problem is we'll need like far away video so you can see. We might even do that outside, actually. Maybe that'll be an outside one where we set up outdoors and we'll have a camera on my tapper, as it were, and a camera on me. And then you can see what it looks like when you have a person really far away working one end of the loops and the other person, the other end, tamping the pattern down.
And yes, I'm her partner.
Yes, this is my condottiero. He is a lucky guy. I agree. Have you thought about doing medieval Korean clothing? Yes, and I have purchased materials for it. I've been doing a lot of research into medieval Korean clothing. My favorite era, honestly, is Sheila. I love Sheila era clothing so much. It's so beautiful. And but I'm warming up to early Koryo. Late Koryo is just frumpy, in my opinion. I'm not real fan of it. Early Joseon, so like 16th century Joseon, has some appeal to me as well. I've developed a taste for it, shall we say, even though it is very voluminous and not figure hugging at all. I have developed it. I do like to be draped in vast amounts of silk, so that's sort of 16th century Joseon is 100% that.
Drape me in the sun.
Exactly. And the local museum here in Daegu, we're going to do a tour of the local museum here in Daegu, by the way, has an amazing collection of extant medieval and early modern by European standards Korean garments.
So maybe we could do that tomorrow.
And maybe we'll go do that. Well, tomorrow morning I've got my Irish textiles live stream.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah, but we're gonna do a tour of that museum and I'll show you some of the amazing artifacts they have, including clothing.
Oh, we could try and do it Monday morning. If
Yeah,
the
we could
museum's
actually.
open.
Well, that's true. Maybe we'll do it Monday morning.
For us,
Monday
Monday
morning
for
our
us.
time, that would be Sunday evening for most of you. Okay, so we are at the end of the braid. Now, I said what I like to do with the ends here, just to secure it until further processing, is to just kind of split this up into groups of 3, and then do just a regular braid. So 2, 2, and 1 in this case. And then I just do a regular sort of what we would do in our hair, a plait as it is, like this, just to kind of cap it off.
Takeda has an interesting comment there.
Okay. Yes, very excited doing my own research into a variety of nun clothing in Europe. But Qing Dynasty clothing has snatched my attention at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, those Twitchy Witches comment.
Yeah, Twitchy Witch. Yeah. Qing. Yeah, Qing is Qing. Oh, Qing era. Yeah. So that's interesting. So Qing era, of course, is post Ming, which most people don't. Or you're talking about which Qing? Which end of the Qing? Which Qing? The proto Qing dynasty, like the first one, or you're talking about like the 17th and 18th century Qing dynasty, the one that followed the Ming dynasty. Yeah, Korea has definitely been there. A lot of material has been produced lately in English on a research on medieval Korean clothing, which makes it much easier to do that research. There's actually a book called A Dress History of Korea I highly recommend for anyone who is interested in historical Korean garments. Unfortunately, a lot of what you see in period K-dramas is more like what I would call fantasy historical clothing. Which I guess lines up with what you see in a lot of Western period movies these days. But you definitely don't take that as how people dressed. For the most part, it was actually more interesting how people dressed in medieval Korea and medieval and pre-modern Korea, we'll call it. Okay, so here is our lace baston. So you can see the pattern that it created. I'm sorry, there it goes. There it is, focused in. Sorry, unfocused. And this would make a really nifty point, right, for your armor, to point that arm harness there. Or even if you make it really long, then it could be a lace. Now this is super thick because the yarn I was using is super thick for visibility. But there we have evidence of, in Estonia, actually, there is a lace that has survived that is a five bow lace, but it has each lace, each bow, each of the loops is actually quadrupled. And that would make a really thick lace. And I've done that. I have doubled and quadrupled my bows so that you get a thicker lace. So that's one way to get a thicker lace, even if you don't have thick yarn.
Twitchy Witches comment.
Oh, 1700s. Yeah, got it. All thanks to C dramas and my desire to know how inaccurate they are. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, oh, I like those clothes. Is that really something people wore? The answer is usually not really.
Although the K dramas do a pretty good job.
You missed me saying the K dramas are like fantasy historical, not.
Depends on which one.
Most of the women is fantasy historical. Yeah. The men, as always, the men are often dressed more accurately in K dramas than the women are. There it is. Yeah, but even still, in the K dramas, a lot of the silhouettes have been updated for modern tastes. Okay, so this, if you are looking for, hold it this way in this angle, this camera. There we go. Sorry. A dress history of Korea. I highly recommend this. It is excellent. And it will also allow you to get in contact with the professors who authored it. Dress history of Korea, not mirrored, so it's backwards, but there it is. Yeah. Can recommend, despite the very not historical looking thing on her head. Yeah. They picked a cover that would certainly draw the eye for certain. Rookie historian, the clothing is again like medium accurate. Like I wouldn't you couldn't take that as for a museum replica. It's definitely colors or fantasy, especially those light colors and the way everyone is dressed in colors. Joseon, medieval Korea was actually known as the land of the white people, and I don't mean that in terms of skin tone. I mean that most of the people wore undyed clothing because dyes were expensive, and most people in Joseon didn't have the money for that. So people from in other kingdoms around Joseon, they're one of the monikers for Joseon was the land of the white people, because most people weren't wearing colored clothing. They were wearing white clothes. And the colors were not those like pastel colors. The colors that they did have were definitely deeper and darker, right? So the color scheme alone is not right. Um, and the depending on the rookie historian is supposed to be the early 19th century, so they would have been actually the waist on the chima would have been lower, and the joggery would have been shorter, and there would have been a really tight band around this area, kind of the a hariti, a belt, kind of massive belt sash thing that would have just flattened everything and covered the gap between those two. So yeah.
1326.
Oh yeah.
The Buddhist temple.
So for instance, if you're interested in medieval Korean clothing, then you get these are 13th century, extant 13th century clothing from Korea, right? So you can actually find extant pieces depicted in this book that are not depicted anywhere else. You can't find these anywhere
That
else.
was in Haynes. You've been there.
Yeah, that found, well, they weren't on display in Haynes.
No.
Yeah. A lot of interestingly in Korea, the way that a lot of clothing has survived from the Middle Ages is the same way that it survived in from medieval Europe in many cases, because clothing was donated to the local Buddhist temple as a votive turned into a votive garment, and then actually locked, not put on statues like it was in medieval Europe, but locked up inside what is basically a reliquary, a pagoda. And so they were enshrined in these anaerobic stone environments where there was no moisture and there was was minimal deterioration. And now that they're moving these pagodas because of various reasons for restoration work or whatever, they're opening them up and they're finding these votive garments in them. So that's why our knowledge of medieval Korean clothing is increasing and has been increasing recently, specifically because of these garments that were donated. And you can tell if it's been donated, because once it gets donated, you actually, the scripture gets written on it, which I don't know if that's even going to show up on the camera, but there's Chinese characters here. In medieval Korea, they were using Chinese characters for the writing system. Modern Korean Hangul was invented in the 15th century by Sejong the Great, but didn't become the writing system of choice until after the Korean War, because the aristocracy didn't want poor people being able to read and write. So only women and the poor and non-noblemen wrote in Hangul up until the 20th century. The scholars and the court of documents and laws were all recorded only in an almost impossible to read Chinese system of writing. Well, impossible for anyone who didn't have 10 to 20 years to devote to learning to read and write in Chinese. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Shame too, we need women in silly hairstyles and big skirts. Oh yeah. I mean, there are big skirts in Korean history. Don't get me wrong. It's just a different kind of big skirt. But silly hair, oh yeah, there's silly hair, and I love the silly hair so much. Yeah. Yeah, putting the garment away to not be worn shows so much wealth and sacrifice. It really does. People were also in Korea, historical Korea, people were also buried in their clothing, and in some cases in like all of their clothing. And now that they're developing Korea and rebuilding it, they're stumbling across these tombs that are just kind of hidden in the hills and the mountains, and they're excavating them. And so what they're finding is you know, um, a woman wearing 7 different joggery and 6 different chima, and she's buried with 7 pairs of socks. And so we're actually sometimes hitting these gold mines of historical clothing because of that practice.
Here's a nice big skirt with a big
hat.
Yeah.
So
your big hat if you want.
Here, for instance, this is early 19th century, so not appropriate for the Middle Ages, but still, here's a big skirt and a fun big hat. I love the Jeonmo. It's such a great hat, and this actually has a veil cover on it. That's why it looks like that.
She has 2.
Yeah, she has 2. Yep.
Rachel has Judith.
Oh, I have 2. I do. I have 2 Jeonmo. I have 2 of these, but they're not really historical. They're definitely modernized.
They're definitely
modern. Yeah. So anyway, let's look at our 2 finger loop braids from today. So we did the Condrake, which was under constant attack from my feline overlords, and she's sitting right here. Let me see if I can. Hey, you. Yeah, now you don't want to come and play now that it doesn't matter, right? Yeah, I know it. And this is This is the second one. This is a lace baston. And if you want to watch this, remember this will post as a recording. So if you want to go back and rewatch anything and relearn how to do it, no problem. You can do that. It'll probably take about 8 to 10 hours to process something this long, but there it is. Okay, fantastic. So do we have new books do we have new books?
We do
to
not.
show?
But
Oh, can you pass me the textile, the Irish textile? So what do we have on tomorrow? So I've got more live stream fun for you all. Also, if you have any questions, now is a good time to pop them in there. If you have any questions about anything I'm wearing, about anything we've done today. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what we have going on. So tomorrow, crack of dawn my time, sort of late afternoon, late evening your time, depending on where you are, we will be talking about the learnings from this wonderful new published book, Elizabeth Wincock Heckett's Textiles of Ireland. So I'm going to be talking about all sorts of really exciting archaeological discoveries from medieval Ireland that's really going to help us inform our understanding of medieval Irish clothing. And will definitely be getting incorporated into my next video on medieval Irish clothing within the pale. So that will be tomorrow's live stream. Philip from Medieval Irish History will be joining me. So we'll have our fun banter going on. So join us for that and you'll get to ask us all the questions. And then tomorrow afternoon, we will be continuing with our afternoon my time. I'm in Seoul time right now. Tomorrow afternoon, we will be continuing with our live reconstruction of a super sexy, super beautiful 15th century dance from Italy, the Bassa Danza Fortunosa. That will be a live stream. So if you're awake, feel free to join in on that. We'll probably be doing it, I don't know, 3 p.m. our time, 4 p.m. our time. That's UTC +9 for those who keep time that way. Yeah, so that's more excitement. And then we think Monday morning, we're probably going to go to the Daegu National Museum and we'll live stream from there. So you get to see the medieval Korean clothing collection, medieval and historical, because they have pieces that are later than medieval, obviously. So stay tuned for all of that fun.
For a new book I'm going to be getting you is a cookbook from a person you know.
Let me see. Free Women for Modern Beauty Standards for Period Drama's Sake. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. God. Twitchy Witch, right? Yes, Twitchy Witch. Cannot agree with you more. I cannot tell you how often it's frustrating that the men are dressed pretty accurately, usually with pretty accurate hair, except for what I call the sexy bangs of the Korean bad boy in these historical dramas. Anyway, meanwhile, the women are, they've been sexified. They've been sexified by modern standards. And sometimes they've been made, these super skinny women who are supposed to be, it's just, no, that's not, no. Any Sheila garments in the museum? No, there are no Sheila garments whatsoever that we've ever found. Unfortunately, the way in which the people in the Sheila dynasty were buried, this is first millennium Korea, the ground conditions are not conducive to the survival of textiles. They're not even conducive to the survival of bones. When they open up these tombs, all they find are metal objects, sometimes wood. There's a couple of textile pieces that survive from saddle mud flaps. And we'll be doing a tour this week. Also, stay tuned for the live tour from Gyeongju National Museum, when I will be showing you the amazing artifacts from the Sheila dynasty. But then I can show you the extant fabric that actually survived in one tomb, but not much. So no, we have no extant garments from the Sheila. We only have some statues and some murals, and not a lot of them. So there's a lot of mysteries about clothing from the Sheila dynasty. And unfortunately, as far as I know, the documentary evidence that has survived from Sheila isn't the kind that's useful for clothing reconstruction. But unfortunately, the documents from Sheila are all in Chinese characters. And so I cannot decipher them myself. So it could be a question of the research being mostly still in Korean. Yeah, we'll see. I plan to reach out to some professors here in Korea and see about who are experts in the history of clothing, specifically the ones who wrote that book, Dress History of Korea, and see if I can get some more information of that documentary nature from them. Yeah. Yeah, acidic soil and archaeologist nightmare. Oh, absolutely. Twitchy Witch, super acidic. I mean, when I say the bones are gone, I mean they are gone. Not a single bit. Oh, what's wrong with Timmy?
I bumped something, so I freaked him out.
Oh, poor Timmy. It's okay, baby. Our kitties are all rescues, and so they still have some of their rescue kitty tendencies. Yeah. Okay, well, just wanted everyone to see the collar I'm wearing today. I'm in what I call my Contessa casual Contessa casual ensemble. This is where I've invited you into my chambers so that we could sew and socialize together. And so I'm dressed mostly in my undergarments and just a couvre chef, but I'm wearing some bling to bling it up for, the Contessa aspect of the nature. So this is actually a reproduction of the Maria Portinari collar, and this is by Armor and Castings, and you can purchase this from them. And I love my collar. It is fantastic. And I have actually worn it in a modern evening gown for, the final bit of bling. Okay, everyone. Well, we've been streaming for over 2 hours at this point. My derriere has gone numb. I'd like one last chance. If you have any questions about anything we've done today, finger loop braiding, talking about historical clothing from various areas. If you have requests for future medieval crafting party live streams, do let me know. And if I don't get to see it here in the live chat, then pop it into the comments when the video posts, and I will absolutely tend to it there. Normalize medieval ladies in their undies and best jewelry because they can. Exactly. Thank you, Twitchy Witch. There are some really snobby reenactors out there who think that women either wore every single layer all the time or nothing at all. And I get a lot of flack from certain British and German reenactors for wearing this exact ensemble. Because, it's not appropriate.
I don't think I know a lot about Mesoamerica stuff.
Yeah, let
between you
me
and I.
see. I love seeing the weaving done in the Mesoamericas. I heard they found one of the largest woven panels in Caral. I have looked into a little bit into Mesoamerica weaving because it actually crops up when you look into the history of finger loop braiding. Yeah, they've got some amazing stuff. It's interesting how a lot of these technologies seem to develop in parallel and aren't necessarily the result of migratory movements of technology. You know, how humans seem to want to do the same kind of thing no matter where they are. Was the collar and gown worn on Cunard? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Oh, really? Yes, the collar and the gown. When we took a cruise from Southampton to New York, and we stopped in the Havre, and we went into Rouen, the famous city of Jeanne d'Arc, and I walked around completely in this ensemble, exploring all those amazing 15th century spaces. Yeah, there's a bunch of shorts on my channel if you want to go check that out, of me dressed basically like this in medieval Rouen. Yeah. I just caught you. I love your very informative shorts. Oh, thank you, great Aunt Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. If you this recording will put this live stream will post as a recording, so you can absolutely go back and watch and see what else I rambled on about. Thank you for watching my shorts, and it's good to know they're informative. I sometimes have problems knowing what might be interesting to you all, to my community, because I know what I know, and I don't know what you don't know, or what you might find interesting anyway, you know? So it's nice to know when I at least come close to the target at any rate. If a lady liked necklace or some bling, she would absolutely wear this regardless of her state of dress. I wear jewelry with my overalls for sewing. Thank you. That is my exact point. It cannot be dressing up your scruffies cannot be a new concept, right? Then it's weird how there's this odd assumption that women that this things must be so different now. We must think just so differently than people did in the Middle Ages or any given period of history. And that's just not, oops, my cat just jumped off of this chair, so it caused that camera to rock. And that's just not true, right? That's just absolutely not true. So yeah, I think there's more similarities between our psychology now and our psychology than people would like to admit. Yep. Just enjoying my tea in my 14th century Korean teacup, wearing my 15th century French ensemble, drinking tea that I bought in Thailand from a tea plantation in Chiang Mai, the medieval capital of the Lana Kingdom.
That's something interesting. We know that there's Roman glass here in Korea, but has there been any Korean pottery found in Europe?
That's a good question. The Silk Road connected Europe to Korea. And you're going to see in the museum tour that we're going to take you on. That'll probably be Tuesday your time, might be Wednesday morning, depending on where you are. In that museum tour, you're going to see ancient Roman glasswares that have been found in Sheila tombs. Right. So we know that Korea was connected to at least Constantinople, and possibly even Rome itself. And so did the question is, has Celadon has Korean pottery, that wouldn't have been Celadon back then, but yeah, wares from Korea, have they been found somewhere in Europe? I know that Ming Dynasty and Yuan Dynasty stuff ends up in some parts of the Mediterranean in like the 14th and 15th century. So yeah, I wonder about Sheila era wares making their way on the backside of that Silk Road connection. Yeah. Sorry, you should go have comfort, but I want to talk medieval ladies dress. Yeah, I mean, this is a chat, right? So I'm also a geek and I will geek out forever. I will die. I swear to God, if I get talking about something like this, I will die of thirst, of dehydration and nutrient deprivation. If someone isn't actually, that's why I have ladies in waiting. That's why what are in the 18th century called. That's why I have damsels, right? It's not because I want people to order around. I mean, I do like telling people what to do, but that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is that if I, especially in a medieval living history context, I will get so focused on doing the thing, on the creating, on the teaching, on the dancing, whatever, that I will forget to eat and I will forget to drink. And sometimes I'll forget to go to the bathroom. And so I need damsels or valets to gently prod me and put a glass with beverage in my hand, to put a platter of food in front of my face, to tell me that we need to actually stop doing the thing we're doing and go do something else. It's a practical thing. It really is.
Should plug the
Roman glass. Yep, Roman glass. Globalization is not a 21st century thing. And if you come with me on the Gyeongju Museum tour, we're going to show you just how very interconnected the ancient world was, let alone the medieval world. It's really exciting.
Oh,
I love the pottery from Mesoamerica. Are you familiar with whistling vessels? I am familiar with whistling vessels. Whistling vessels. Yes, I am. Really, yeah, there's some really fun stuff. I mean, some of the shapes of Mesoamerican pottery are they're fantastic, right? I'm a pottery junkie. It's a problem I have. If this apartment were a disaster, I would actually show you some of my pottery addiction. In fact, I have a pile of broken pottery that I'm going to be kintsugiing back together using traditional kintsugi techniques. I'll do a live stream on that so you can see me try to poison myself with poison ivy, poison ivy chemicals. Yeah, and my condottiero even makes pottery. My condottiero, let me show you, made this 3-handled mug. Isn't this awesome? Yeah, he made this not on a wheel. He made it using a Korean traditional Korean rope, what I call the rope technique, right? Pretty neat, huh? Turned out really well.
Hopefully, I've got a larger one waiting to be picked up.
Let me see. China trying to introduce a modern Silk Road network now. The more things change, the more. Yeah, yeah, exactly. China with the Belt and Road project. But I'm going to tell you that China's Belt and Road project is a lot more sinister than the Silk Road was. The Silk Road didn't come with the strings that the Belt and Road project definitely has. Let me see. I dive deep into medieval nunware, and I will tell anyone my theory that nun and monkwear are not connected in any way until during the Renaissance Catholic resurgence. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's actually, nunwear is actually some of the earliest documentation we have about women wearing underpants from the 12th century. There's a statute, and I forget which order it was and where exactly. I apologize, but I do know there's a statute. I've read it, and it's about nuns, the clothing that a nun is allowed to have. And underpants are absolutely explicitly stated. And by underpants, I mean the brief things that you wear right around your loins. Yeah. So definitely. And you can see that visually that they're connected in the same way clothing is connected in the Middle Ages, but they're wearing different things, right? Let me see. Oh, I just love them. I mastered making the whistles. Oh, Vicky, that's impressive. You actually managed to, oh, congratulations on making the whistling pottery that actually whistles. Major kudos for me, because those practical, yeah, wow, impressive. Let me see. All from laundry lists and the fact that nuns' clothing came from outside the convent while monks came from inside. Yeah, and nuns, this is the thing people don't understand. Nuns, when they entered a convent, they were the bride of Christ, right? Could I have some more tea, please? They were the bride of Christ. So they actually came with a dowry. They came with a chest full of their clothing. They came with materials to make more clothing. So at least in certain parts, maybe not everywhere. The parts I've studied, they have, right? And they actually, came with that stuff pre-made. And when they died, the monastery usually inherited it, the convent usually inherited it, and those clothes either became votive, they've got recycled into other things, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's a different situation for women than it is for men. Men aren't the bride of Christ, right? The women were.
I think it is the coil pottery is the same
Yeah,
thing.
coil pottery. Did I
Yeah.
say rope pottery? I meant coil. Sorry. I imagine in my head the little ropes of clay you make. Coil pottery.
That's
Yes.
how
Yes.
she translated it for us, our
Right.
translator. So you make ropes.
Yep. The dowerless. Exactly. Yep. I've heard the rope technique called coil pottery. Yes, I am talking about coil. Yeah. Yep. Sorry. I'm back. I've been talking. Yes, Caravaggio, you and I see eye to eye on this 100%. And it's already, yeah.
Let's
Well,
just saw
the future is scary, I'll put it that way. So people are like, why do you love medieval? Why are you so fascinated by medieval material culture? I said, well, one, there are connections that I can feel between medieval material culture and our modern life. And there's so many things we can learn about sustainable living from medieval practices. But two, in another way, it's so disconnected from the modern dumpster fire that is our world that it's relaxing for me. um, Yeah, I wish we could talk in person. I want to talk for hours about this. Twitchy Witch, are you going to Penzic? So, for those who don't know, I travel the world and do this medieval living history thing everywhere. I will be at Penzic for 2 weeks. I have an encampment. I welcome everyone. I'll be encamped in Belfiore in the Enchanted Grounds, which is at the base of Runestone Hill. And I love meeting people. I love interacting. I'll be teaching lots of classes and balls and hosting things. So please stop by and say hello. I really, really like to meet you all face to face for certain. I'm definitely a face to face person. I live off of other people's energy. Um, Let me see. I loved making a june also, if you're familiar with this instrument. I'm trying to make that sound. A jun. That's that guttural sound, the glottal stop sound that they make in the Mesoamerican languages. I'm actually not familiar with that instrument. Vicky, which instrument is that? Let's see. I'm in the UK. Is that UK? No, Penzic is the US. Damn it. But maybe don't go this year or next year. Give it a couple of years.
This year.
I have done medieval living history all across Europe, though. For those who don't know, I can be hired to come to your medieval living history event or fantasy event and bring the Contessa magic, teach workshops, teach dance, just generally make it a more magical, immersive medieval experience for everyone. Share all the skills I have. I do get hired to do that. So if any of you would like me to do that, reach out to me. I'm on all the social media, and my email address and website are posted in the description. So yeah.
Stephanie
Yep.
DeVille.
Let me see. Oh, Isabeau, hello, you made it just as we said we were going to end, and then we didn't, and then we just got chatting. I stopped crafting a little while ago because we did two different finger loop braids, and I talked about Farsetti and the cats attacked, and it was very exciting. And so now we're just geeking out about clothing and garb and pottery.
Well, we did travel to India once.
Yeah, Twitchy Witch, if you're part of a club or an organization that would like to hire me to come and bring the magic, I will absolutely do that. But also, I do travel also, and when I do travel, I like to host creative Contessa receptions wherever I go. So I always let people know. I don't have any current plans to go to anywhere in Europe, but that's not because I don't want to go. It's just our lives have been very haphazard lately. But I'm desperate to get back because it's been a while since I've actually spent any. It's been almost 2 years, and that's too long for me to not be in Europe for any length of time. So we'll definitely be getting back soon. I I have traveled to India, and I would love to go back to India. I would like to go out into the rural parts of India that are beautiful, where the air is still clean, and see the different kinds of traditions and handcrafts that are still being practiced in those areas. Yeah, I have been to India once, and I definitely want to go back. And I love Indian food, like north, south, east, west. I love all the central. I love all Indian food so much. I love curry. I love all the different things. So yeah, India is definitely on my list for certain. What country is my home base? Well, that's a complicated question. I'm kind of nomading it right now. Yeah. So home base is
Technically, see it.
technically Seattle is my home of record, shall we say? But I don't spend very much time there. Yeah, I'm currently spending the preponderance of my time in Korea. Yeah, and traveling around. I do travel a lot.
Well, I find a job.
But yeah, I travel a lot, and I have no problem traveling anywhere in the world. I travel tens of thousands of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of miles a year. So yeah,
Neat.
I'm an independent maker is actually training in church embroidery. Oh, nice. Medieval, yeah, and teaching myself medieval clothing because no money for uni. Yeah. Yeah, well, let me tell you, Twitchy Witch, you are in a great place to learn embroidery, like especially actual medieval embroidery, because there are actually really good workshops in the UK for that. Now they're expensive, at least the ones that I saw are pretty expensive. But you know, you're welcome to learn whatever you can from my channel. I do medieval embroidery. I'll have to do an embroidery and what would we say that? Innervate and embroidery instead of stitch and bitch. I don't know. Oh, the Chinese globular vessel flute. Oh, right. We call that Koreans call that an yeah, ocarina. Yeah, right. Yeah, described as a Chinese ocarina. Right. Okay. Yeah, in Korea they call it an ocarina. There are players of that here, right? The professional players who can be hired for events. Oh, very cool. I mean, to be able to make functioning instruments out of pottery is pretty neat. That's a pretty good skill to have.
Yeah, the cool thing about being in England is the churches there. Well, anywhere in Europe, you can sometimes find some really interesting private collections.
That's a tip. If you're in Europe, and you're interested in medieval material culture, go to every church you can. Go to their treasury collection because there's lots of medieval textiles, actually. It's ones that were donated, ones that were used as parts of the ceremony of the liturgy. And they're not in these textiles are not in catalogs, they're not in books, they're not on the web. And so you can actually find new information about medieval textiles by going to these smaller churches, even some cathedral. A lot of cathedral treasuries aren't digitized, they're not available, right? So if you're interested in researching and exploring medieval material culture and you're in Europe, European material culture, sorry, obviously the world existed everywhere in the Middle Ages, but medieval material culture in Europe, go to every church you can imagine and just go to their treasury. You're going to find things that will surprise you because often if they open up crypts, for example, during restoration work, then the clothing from the graves, which are secular clothing, ends up in the treasury display, right? And also ask them if they have anything in their archives and if you can take a look at it. At worst, they'll say no, go to hell. But they probably won't say the go to hell part. They'll just say no. But at best, they'll say, "Oh my God, you're interested? Yes, let me come and show you these garments." So, for example, the extant farsetto. The extant version of this, Diego di Cavaniglia's Farsetto, is in the monastery in Faloni, in which is kind of near Naples-ish. And it's off the beaten trail and no one goes there. But if you I reached out to the monks and they were very happy to let me come and look at his garments. I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet. So I need to reach out again because I really want to go and look at these garments as face to face as possible. Yeah. So that's my tip. Go to monasteries, go to convents, go to churches, go to cathedrals, and check out what they have in their treasuries because a lot of it has not been documented beyond the confines of the church itself.
I don't like Twitchy Witch anymore. I don't like feeling this jealous.
Yeah, I'm very lucky to live 5 minutes from one of the UK's oldest cathedrals, and I'm doing gold work in Opus Anglicanum. Yeah, there you go, with the head of the Church Embroidery Guild. Twitchy Witch, I say this with all the love in the world. I hate you.
I don't like feeling this jealous.
I don't like feeling this jealous. Is my skin turning green? Green Celadon cup for comparison. Oh, Twitchy Witch, I might have to visit you, and I'll just go with you and to the classes because I've taught myself a lot, but it wouldn't be bad for me to learn from actual professionals. It means get a hand in church textile restoration and research. It's amazing. Yeah, Twitchy Witch, you're now on my blacklist. No, seriously, I'm so happy for you. That is absolutely fantastic. So now I definitely have to come and visit you. 100%.
You need to back up just a minute. Somebody said they like your necklace.
Oh, let me see. Oh, look at those eyelets. Oh, are we talking about hold on a minute, Joy Creatus Life? We're talking about these eyelets? Yeah.
She taught me to do that.
Yep. But I did these. These are the ones I did all those years ago. Yeah, I did teach you how to do this. Yep. Lots of eyelets, lots and lots and lots of eyelets, and eyelets everywhere, right? All my medieval clothing is nothing but eyelets. I love Winchester Cathedral, by the way. I love Winchester. We love Winchester. Winchester's a really nice place. Question about the necklace. Oh, I love your necklace. Yeah, that's also Joy. Yeah, so this is the Maria Portinari collar, a replica of it by Armor and Castings. They have a whole bunch of amazing items. I do recommend going and checking out their website. They are a channel sponsor, so I'll be 100% honest. But first, I spent a lot of money buying stuff from them, like this, and then I suggested they become a channel sponsor. So I have, in fact, put a lot of my own money where my mouth is when it comes to Armor and Castings. And they have an amazing collection across multiple periods and multiple cultures. So definitely check out Armor and all sorts of different bits, belts, pendants, rings, necklaces. Yeah, get the belt. Rings, everything. I'm in the process of working on a video essay about rings in the Middle Ages that will feature a bunch of their lovely rings. Got some really interesting things to talk about when it comes to medieval rings. Some applications people haven't really thought about. Applications, uses? I don't know, applications actually might be the right term. Oh, thank you, Twitchy Witch, using my channel to help lurkers get better kit. Perfect. That's my goal. That's when I set out on this whole journey, other than trying to find a replacement career for my dead translation career. Yeah, so this is also this belt you may have seen in some of my getting dressed videos, for instance, or my dance videos, or my random medieval living history videos. Yeah, so this ultra wide version of the buckle was a custom piece by Armor and Castings. They did what it's called the harness, the metal parts are referred to as harness in the documentary evidence. And we built the belt, and there's a vlog on how to build this belt. We did it together. Right, there is a vlog on my channel on how we made this belt if you're interested in checking that out. Sorry, put this here. It's made out of silk. It's got a leather core with silk damask covering. And this is a replica pattern. I got this silk damask on eBay of all places for $35 a yard, which is crazy cheap for silk damask of this quality. And yeah, so this is the kind of stuff you can get at Armor and Castings, and for very, very reasonable prices. They're a Ukrainian company, so you'd be supporting the effort in Ukraine against, evil Mother Russia. And I'm not that I have opinion about that at all.
You also have birches down there underneath of all that.
Do I? Oh, I've got my jewelry box here. Right. Oh, goodness, what a mess. Forgot I've got my jewelry box here. This is my collar case, actually. This is actually, it's wood with covered in leather, and it has a lid. And this is specifically so that I can travel with my medieval jewelry. And it was built specifically to be my collar box, but our other pieces go in here as well, although we might want to start wrapping them. So yeah, you can see this is another, this is a pendant, Burgundian style pendant from Armor and Castings. And it should be worn sort of here for ladies. I'm about to do a short about all the ways you can wear your pendant bling. Right? And these are badges. Be doing. Sorry, trying to figure out where cameras are. Where are they? Why are they like this? Yeah. This is the Ragged Staff badge. And each sort of royal house and each nobleman of any kind of rank in England and France in the 15th century, 14th, 15th century had a badge. And they would actually have these badges cast up in different grades. So you could have, more expensive ones made out of gold, either solid gold or gilt for your upper level retainers, your high ranking retainers. And then, for each rank down, there's a less precious metal. And you would give your retainers these badges, and they would wear them on their person somewhere as a sign of their allegiance. But this doesn't seem to be a thing that was done so much in Italy. I haven't found evidence of that practice in Italy, interestingly. And I haven't looked into in Spain at all. So I can't address Spain, sort of the Iberian Peninsula, in any way, shape, or form when it comes to badges. But Yeah. Also, of course, badges were also a sign of pilgrimage. So this one is a Saint Nicholas, right? So, depending on where you would go on pilgrimage, that pilgrimage site would have a badge that you would purchase, and then you could either display it on yourself as a sign of your pilgrimage and your devotion, or they actually, Charles the Bold actually had a book of hours, and in the page of the book of hours, he actually sewed his pilgrimage badges onto one of the pages, like a stamp book. I mean, how fascinating is that? That the Duke of Burgundy, the most puissant prince in the 1460s and 1470s, had a book of hours into which his pilgrimage badges, the sign of his devotion, were sewn. And I mean, it doesn't get more private than that because this book was not on display. It wasn't out and about. It only came out occasionally, but it was like his own private memento of his devotion. And just like collecting stamps, except expensive stamps sewn into a very expensive book. Yeah. So, yeah, these are all armor and casting pieces. Highly recommend you go and check out their site if you would like some bling of your own. Yeah, yeah, Twitchy Witch. Yes, Susan is right. Sorry, I'm just getting scrolling back through the comments. Leather, it's interlined in leather. And I went with a white leather, not on purpose necessarily, but the thing you want to think about on the leather you're going to use inside and the fabric with which you're going to cover it is bleeding through because if you do 15th century activities, you're going to sweat. Because you're going to do things like dance and you're going to walk around and you're probably going to sweat. And then that sweat could actually leach through all the way to the front. And then it can make the leather wet. And then if there's a dye stuff in the leather, then that could leach onto your fabric. Right. And red is the worst, most unstable dye stuff for leather ever. And it will stain your clothes. Keep that in mind. Hot take, a lot of medieval jewelry is better than today as they were designed to be used multiple ways and often could be dismantled from items. Yes, yeah, jewelry has suffered from overconsumption, 100%. So, pieces like this, the reason that we don't have many extant medieval pieces is because, as Twitchy Witch says, they would often disassemble it so that it could be remade into a more fashionable piece, right? So the gem would be removed, the pearls would be removed, the gold would be melted down, or whatever the metal would be melted down, and then reused. So we don't have many extant pieces for that reason. But when we do have extant pieces is usually if things get dangerous and there's like an invasion or a war, and then they put things in a hoard and hide it, and then that hoard gets found later, as just happened in Poland, was it? Poland where they found the crowns? That hoard of crowns a couple of months ago? I think it was Poland. In a cathedral, they found that hoard of medieval Polish crowns and regalia, right? I'm pretty certain it was Poland. It was somewhere in Eastern Europe. Anyway, yep, exactly. So yeah, medieval jewelry was what we do have though, was high quality, but also it wasn't necessarily as perfect as we might expect it to be. So some of the extant votive coronets, for instance, you're like, wow, that was put together in a really crappy fashion if you look closely at them. Let me see. It's jarring how much of a high quality live stream this is compared to everything else live on YouTube right now. Keep up the good work. Oh, thank you, Alex. I really appreciate that. You know, I just if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right, which is why it takes me 50 to 100 hours to edit a video to make a polished final video, because I want the transitions to be good and I want the information to be based on primary source evidence, and I want to provide you with quotes and original pieces, and I want everything to look good and to sound good. So yeah, no, I'm all about the quality. I take pride in my work. What can I say? Let's see. Hordes. Yep, Twitchy Witch hordes, exactly. Superhelm, hello, thank you for joining us today. Yeah, high quality doesn't mean perfect. Yeah, Twitchy Witch, you're absolutely right. No, you're right. Quality materials and even quality workmanship doesn't necessarily mean that everything is perfect. Absolutely, I agree with that. Somebody said the only reason we have extant clothing examples is bad housekeeping. In this case, the hoard was not recovered. Yeah, right. Stream is perfect. Appreciate you, Twitchy, which I totally understood what you meant. Yeah. Um, a lot of, so a lot of our extant medieval clothing we have, or clothing bits, we only have because of the sustainable approach to medieval living, the medieval Medieval people's sustainable approach to living, by which I mean when a garment becomes too worn out to just patch and repair, or it can't be downsized anymore, they would take that bit of medieval garment and they would either turn it into rag paper, which, okay, we can't, no extant garments from rag paper. But the other option is to use it for insulation because medieval people didn't like being cold either. And so they would actually stuff the walls, the floors, and the ceilings with the extant bits of garments. And now in the modern era, when we are restoring castles or medieval homes or other medieval buildings, we tear, generally you tear off the plaster to look at the wood and do any kind of treatment that's necessary, and lo and behold, we're increasingly finding extant garments stuffed in the walls. That's hence the Langberg finds in Schloss Langberg. And there's a similar hoard, similar trove from an Italian castle, but unfortunately the castle's private and the owners don't want it getting out where they are, and they won't let us, the two fashion historians, textile historians who did the research work, the conservation work, they won't let them actually do any kind of real publishing about it. So it's real frustrating. It was two Swedish fashion historians. They also have an Instagram, and I can't remember what their handle is. But so we have a similar trove of 14th and 15th century extant Italian garments, civilian garments, not religious garments, and we can't find anything out about them. It's very frustrating. It's very sad for me. Yeah. And it was learning this as a child that got me into historical dress. I wanted to repair and reuse my own clothing, so it's been a long road to the point where I am now. I guess I can bring this closer now. It doesn't have to be so far away because I'm not finger loop braiding. Yeah, I've been wanting to make my own clothes since I was a very little girl. And I told the story of this recently. When I was about 9, I wanted my grandmother to teach me how to make a dress. And I went and took the allowance money that I'd saved up and I bought fabric from the local fabric store. We still had fabric stores downtown back then before downtown died out. And it was beautiful white satin. Even then I wanted to be a pretty, pretty princess. And I brought the fabric home and my grandmom said, well, I've got some things to do the next couple of days and we'll get to it later. But I didn't want to wait. So I just started cutting and sewing with the skills I didn't have. And I basically ruined the fabric. And my grandmother was very frustrated that I didn't have the patience to wait for her. But that was my first foray. So I'm mostly an autodidact because I've generally always lived in places where classes weren't possible. But yeah.
You're gonna lose this streams.
Oh, okay. That's okay. That's okay. You can go ahead and end that camera anyway. We're done with the upper hen. Yeah, I used to find a lot of newspapers under the lathe. Yep. There.
Got it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it's
Why is it not taking it now? How do I end this?
hit the mute button. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, the other camera tried to turn its microphone on and do all sorts of things. Nicole, hello. Especially when one teacher said they burnt their clothing and I just didn't believe it. Yeah, no one burns clothing in the Middle Ages. What a waste. Why would you do that? That's ridiculous. No, the medieval living was extremely circular, right? You had from raw materials through to a finished product to being upcycled to being recycled to being repurposed until finally nothing else can be done with it. It's either used as insulation, as stuffing for another garment, or turned into rag paper, right? There is no burning of I mean, I haven't even heard of them burning the clothes of victims of plague victims. I've even read accounts of people taking clothes from plague victims and rewearing them. You want to talk about reduce, reuse, recycle? That's a desperate level of recycling.
Let's go through
Yeah. Ooh. We found maybe a 50-year-old newspaper under our linoleum. We put photos, a letter, and some contemporary stuff in the door frame. We put in nice. Great, Aunt Elizabeth. That's so cool. You purposefully built in a time capsule that way. That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing what you find when you start tearing the walls of old buildings out. And in Europe and Asia, that's more likely to find really old stuff. Less likely to find really old stuff here. Not many, unfortunately, in Mesoamerica, not many residential structures survived from, the middle, what are the Middle Ages in Europe, right? Pre-Columbian residential structures. A lot of the ritual structures survive because they're built out of stone. But anything that's not made out of stone is taken back by the jungle like that. And even the stone, the jungle tries real hard to take it back.
Same
So-
thing in Thailand, the old capital, all the stone temple stuff.
Yeah, that's true. In Thailand, it's the same thing. If you go to medieval sites in Thailand, which we have and do, we do pretty regularly, very fortunate. Hashtag life is good. But you know, we went to Ayutthaya, which looks like Ayutthaya if you look at it and how it's written. It's not how it's pronounced though. The pre Bangkok capital of Siam, the medieval capital, basically burnt up at the end of the 18th century. So all that's left now are the stone, the brick, and the stone and the masonry. So it makes you think that that's all the city was, just brick and stone and masonry. But no, there were tons of beautiful wooden pavilions, wooden superstructures, wooden houses in which people lived, but they didn't survive. And even if they hadn't burnt down, the second a city gets abandoned in anything in Thailand, honestly, if you move out of a wooden building for more than a month, probably the jungle has taken it back. It's done. The plant life has eaten it, the moisture has eaten it. It's done. It's not going to survive very long without people sort of living in it and maintaining it. So, you know, it can be hard to find traces of daily life depending on where you are in the world. Europe is luckier because it's a more temperate climate, and so less likely for, you know, half timber structures to get taken back by nature so quickly, also less likely to get abandoned. Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Okay, well, everyone, I'm really going to call it there because now I can tell that I can't feel my butt anymore. But please do join me for those other couple of live streams we're going to be doing over the next couple of days. If you hadn't hit the notification bell, not only hit the notification bell, but right click on it and make sure that you get the notifications you want, because YouTube assumes that it will tell you what you want. If you really want all notifications about when I'm like going live and produce new content, which is almost every day, then make sure that you're getting all the notifications. And even then, it's whatever. Oh, also, if you want your notifications on your mobile device, I just found out you have to make sure you go to the app notifications on your mobile device and make sure that you're allowed to receive notifications from, say, the YouTube app in this case. Otherwise, you won't get notified on your phone. So that's another thing I've recently learned. All these, I'm such an expert, right, on all this crap. It's ridiculous. I could get hired just to be a social media expert or just to do video editing. Or to do production. I can do the whole production. I know everything now. I know how to color tint. I know how to gamma correct. It's ridiculous. All I want to do is make medieval stuff, learn medieval stuff, and share it with you all. Okay, everyone. Have a lovely day, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. If you feel like it, leave a little comment after the video post for engagement. And I really hope to see you all in the next live stream tomorrow morning, later on today, depending on where you are. Medieval Irish Textiles with Philip from Medieval Irish History. Bye, everyone. I really appreciate your support. Tea time and blood and butt time.
That sounds so bad.
Yeah, okay, that does sound bad. Pretend I didn't say that.
That's an ending.
And cut.
We're going to cut you off right there.